Okay, here we go. Just get everything set up here, and let's get started. Shout out to Iceman, good to see you here, man. Shout out to Rolf Stonefist every time. Good to see you here, bro. God bless. So yeah, wait for a few people to join, and we'll get started. Yeah, maybe round up some men. Yeah, of course, Rolf. Absolutely. Take us a few prisoners, why not? So yeah, we've got the Joe Smith Jr. Artur Beterbiev fight coming up, man. Really good fight. Hasn't gotten quite as much hype and as much attention as maybe it should have, because let's be honest, this is a really good fight, even if most of us pretty much agree on the result. See, I didn't do a prediction video for the fight, and the reason why is because I realised from listening to other people that people tend to see this fight pretty much the same way. And I don't know, I'm kind of generalising there. Some people see it differently, but for the most part, pretty much everybody sees the fight the same way. You know, it should be a great fight, should be a shootout, and most people, including myself, are picking Beterbiev. But despite the fact that we're picking Beterbiev, most people, again, including myself, are giving Joe Smith Jr. a pretty good puncher's chance because, again, it's just that kind of fight. You know, Beterbiev, he's incredibly dangerous. He's a very good fighter. But it's not as if there aren't any vulnerabilities there. And it's not as if Joe Smith Jr. doesn't have the power to turn it around. So that's what I really like about this fight. Okay, it's two big men, two big punchers. Should be a great fight, man. But I do very strongly favour Beterbiev, and I have from the very beginning. And like I said, you know, that's kind of the narrative going into the fight. That's what I've been seeing from pretty much everybody, is that most people seem to think that Beterbiev is the favourite, but they're not writing Joe Smith Jr. off. And I pretty much see it the same way, and that's why I didn't go as far as to make a prediction video, because what could I really say that hasn't already been said, you know? Shout out to Fight Film, good to see you here, man, every time. God bless Precise. I saw your prediction for the fight as well, and yeah, I pretty much agree with what you were saying. I think that Beterbiev, you know, he's not as vulnerable as people think he is. I mean, yeah, he's been down before. You know, he's been down a couple of times in his career, but it's not as if he's ever shown any serious vulnerabilities. And you know, each time he's been down, he's gotten up, and not only has he won, but he's won by knockout. So, you know, even if Joe Smith Jr. does score a knockdown early in the fight, who's to say that Beterbiev won't get up and kick his ass? You know, I could totally see that happening. I could see both guys scoring a knockdown. I could see it being that type of fight. What's up, mate? Good to see you. Hearing Nicola Sturgeon and Joe Biden will be in attendance for Beterbiev Smith Jr. No comment. Yeah, definitely. Joe Smith's got a shot, but he needs to catch him coming in. Yeah, he needs to kind of catch Beterbiev while Beterbiev is sort of in a rhythm, if you know what I mean. So, like, because I think Beterbiev's the better boxer of the two, and he's going to be the guy just chopping down Joe Smith. And I think Joe Smith needs to kind of catch him with something big while Beterbiev is throwing, if you know what I mean. That's the only chance he has, because I honestly don't see Smith winning on points. I don't see him outboxing Beterbiev. And, you know, some people have said that maybe he could get a gift decision, because obviously when he fought the other Russian, Vlasov, he was very fortunate to get the decision in that fight. But let's be perfectly honest, Vlasov wasn't really that well known, wasn't very highly regarded, whereas Beterbiev is, of course, a very exciting fighter. He's a guy who has been champion for a while now. You know, he's unified. He's the lineal champion of the division, and he's got a bit of clout and a bit of name value there. So I don't think it's very likely that they would rob Beterbiev. I think the most likely outcome here is, like I said, Beterbiev by stoppage in the later rounds, but the only real chance I give to Joe Smith is to land sort of a one-punch knockout. That's kind of the main chance that I give to him, you know. What's happening, Vector? Shout out to Lee Talks Boxing. Good job with the channel so far. Once again, I'm really enjoying the content. It's getting better and better. Won't be surprised if he puts Beterbiev down early. Yeah, I could see that too. In the early rounds, I could see Smith landing something big and putting him down. So, it's that kind of fight, isn't it? Both guys are dangerous. Both guys have got power in both hands, and both guys can knock the other out. But one guy for me is better than the other, and I think that's Beterbiev. I know that Lee, to be fair, Lee Talks Boxing, he's picking Joe Smith. He's picking Joe Smith to win this fight. So, yeah, that would be a pretty good pick if he pulls it off. Good. Shout out to Freezing Boxing. Good to see you here, man. Yeah, long time no see. Yeah, just been pretty busy lately. Same old story, Just been working away, minding my own business, and yeah, not been on YouTube as often as I used to be, But hopefully, I can get a little bit of a routine going, and we can get some more videos like this, more lives, and I've wanted to make predictions for some of the fights recently, but like I said, the fights that have been coming up recently, like the Daniel Dubois, Trevor Bryan fight, and of course this fight, most people's predictions are pretty much the same as what I was going to say, so there wasn't really anything I could add to any of these up-and-coming fights recently that hasn't already been said, so I didn't really see a point in predicting any of those fights. Yeah, you're doing good. I mean, rambling into the mic, that's basically what I do, and I've been doing this for years, so yes, it is what it is, man. Definitely a puncher's chance for Smith, but Beterbiev chin's being underrated. Didn't even look hurt against Johnson. Well, yeah, Johnson's a pretty big puncher, and he got up and he handled his business and got him out of there in 4 rounds, I think it was. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely a concern. He definitely can be hit and he can be dropped, but he's never been knocked out, has he? And he's never been stopped. So I don't think that his chin is anywhere near as bad as people are saying it is. I mean, he doesn't have a Antonio Margarito chin or a Marius Wack chin, but he doesn't have an Amir Khan, David Price chin, does he? He doesn't have a John Fury chin. So I don't think it's as bad as people are saying. I'm looking forward to it, man. It's going to be a really entertaining fight, and it's definitely going to be a lot better than a lot of the shit shows we've seen recently. I mean, boxing recently hasn't been that good in terms of just entertaining fights. This is one that I can't see it not being entertaining, If it is, I'll really be surprised. Dubois versus Bryan, an absolute clown show. Dubois couldn't throw more than a jab, right. Bryan was fat, out of shape, no boxing ability, looked bad not getting him out in 1. Yeah. I mean, the thing that I would think about that fight is, see if you look at Trevor Bryan. Let's just say that you've never seen Trevor Bryan box before. Let's say you've never seen his record, and you don't know about the WBA title. Let's say you just saw some clips of Trevor Bryan. You would think that he was sort of a lower tier journeyman in the heavyweight division. That's what you would think. You wouldn't envision him being a guy who was undefeated and had a winning record, and you certainly wouldn't envision him being a world champion. So, I mean, whatever was going on with Don King there, sort of grooming Trevor Bryan and protecting him and guiding him through and ensuring that he became world champion by any means necessary, and then just serving him up to Daniel Dubois like that. I mean, to me, it just seemed so dodgy. It seemed so manufactured, and I don't know what's going on there. It's very weird. But in some ways, it's kind of reminiscent of what happened with Bermane Stiverne, another Don King fighter, when he was kind of built up like that against easy opposition, and he became world champion. And, of course, we saw what happened right away. As soon as he became world champion, they fed him to an up-and-comer in Deontay Wilder. That was sort of a similar situation, I think. And it's as if Don King kind of fattens these guys up and just keeps their record fresh and gets these guys holding a title and then sort of sacrifices them and sort of throws them in with the next up-and-comer. That's kind of what happened there, And, of course, we know that Don King and Frank Warren have a good relationship. They've worked together many times over many years. So you never know. Maybe this was all manufactured to get Daniel Dubois becoming up a world champion. Do you know what's funny as well? Like when I was in work the other day, right, and on my lunch break, because we've got a TV that has kind of YouTube on it, and I was watching the highlights of Trevor Bryan versus Dubois because I didn't watch the fight live, so I was sort of catching up on it during the week. And one of my colleagues at work, who he's not really a boxing fan, he's kind of an MMA fan, and he casually watches boxing, so a casual boxing fan. And he said to me, he was like, "Is this semi-professional?" That was what he asked me about the Daniel Dubois Trevor Bryan fight, and I almost burst out laughing because that's exactly how it looks, isn't it? It looked like a semi-professional fight, like a tough man contest, a white collar thing. That was how it looked, and I was like, yeah, you wouldn't believe that fat guy was a world champion, would you? I found that pretty funny, man. I really did. Because that's exactly how it looked. I mean, the guy was so out of shape, so limited. You would never think that he had a pad. You'd never think he had a world title or a winning record. You never would, man. Mostly just question his age and inactivity. You're on about Beterbiev because yeah, he has been inactive over the years. Hasn't had the most hasn't had the most activity in his career. He hasn't really been moved as quick as I would have hoped. And he's had injuries and promotional issues. Callum Johnson is going to be fighting Mikhalkin on July 2nd. Good fight. Yeah, that's an interesting fight. You're on about Igor Mikhalkin, the Russian. That's an okay opponent. I think Callum Johnson will probably stop him, but it'll be a fun fight while it lasts. Mikhalkin doesn't have much power though. If Beterbiev wins fighting Yard in the UK next, awful fight for me. Beterbiev should deal with Anthony Yard pretty easily. Again, that's another situation that's similar to the Joe Smith fight. Anthony Yard would have a puncher's chance, but he probably wouldn't win. Beterbiev is just so much more refined and so much more skilled. He'll completely destroy Yard. He'll win that fight, I think, probably by a late stoppage after schooling him, kind of like Sergey Kovalev did. Can't be worse than the Haney fight. Nah, not much can be worse than that, can it, man? Dave Allen could probably do Trevor Bryan in 4 rounds. Yeah, he probably could, Like Dave Allen, as rubbish as he is, he's a better athlete than Trevor Bryan, and he's got better boxing skills. I'm not even exaggerating there. I saw some Brits hyping up Bryan, another super bum. Yeah, to be honest with you, I didn't see any hype for Bryan. Everybody that I saw said that Dubois was going to knock him out, and to me that was just the standard prediction across the board for that fight. So yeah, I didn't even. That was why I didn't even bother making a prediction, because everybody was saying exactly what I thought about that fight. They needed to build him back up after that loss to the Juggernaut. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's interesting. Precise himself, he made some interesting points about that. He was kind of insinuating, maybe I'm taking it out of context, but he was kind of insinuating that Frank Warren sort of set Daniel Dubois to lose, kind of like what they ended up doing with Wilder, serving him up all these divers and not really developing him as a fighter, and then throwing him straight in with Joe Joyce, who obviously a lot of us on here thought Dubois had a good chance of winning that fight. But when it comes to behind the scenes, and Precise makes this point, I'm pretty sure that Daniel Dubois' trainer, that Daniel Dubois' manager, Frank Warren and whoever, they must have known. They must have known behind the scenes that he wasn't ready for that fight. So maybe he was right. Maybe they set him up to lose. I don't know. But for whatever reason, it was a bad defeat, and it took a lot out of Daniel Dubois. And yeah, they definitely needed to build him up. But getting him a world title against a guy like Trevor Bryan might not actually be good for him in the long run, because he's going to have mandatories, he's going to have tough contenders knocking on his door and calling him out, and it seems as if they're just going to serve him up to some other hype job, because he's not good enough to win against a lot of the top contenders just yet, I don't see no way how Smith won versus Vlasov. Rewatched the fight today, had it 8-4 Vlasov. If you're Joe's mama, you could give him a draw, I suppose. Well, he was an American fighting a Russian in America. That's how he won. That should really explain it all, Trevor Bryan is a poor man's Kevin Johnson, yeah. Yeah, he's a slightly more entertaining but slightly less durable version of Kevin Johnson. That pretty much sums him up. Prime Kevin Johnson would have probably stopped him, I'm not even joking there. Horrible fight, yeah. Yeah, man, it was a horrible fight. WBA regular champions can either be crap or good. Trevor Bryan is bad while Lee Wood is pretty good. Well, let's not forget Manny Pacquiao himself was a WBA regular champion at one point, and he went and won the super title off Thurman. And, you've had decent fighters over the years holding that title. Jürgen Bremer wasn't bad. Povetkin, of course, had famously had that title. So it's a fairly prestigious title. Some good fighters have held it over the years, but with a guy like Trevor Bryan holding it, it really isn't a good look. And now Dubois, who kind of leapfrogged Joe Joyce, who beat him. Now you've got Dubois holding that title. It's not a good look, man. It's really not. Dubois showed no improvement since the Joyce fight. If they put him in against Dillian Whyte, I think he gets knocked out. I don't know about that. I think Dillian Whyte's probably on his way out the door, man. I'd probably favour Dubois to knock him out, I probably would. Stavern took a dive versus Trevor Bryan. I slowed the KO down and the right hand didn't even land that Stavern supposedly got KO'd with. Well, it wouldn't be the first time, in my personal opinion, that Stavern has took a dive, because I thought he took a dive against Deontay Wilder. So, yeah, maybe that's just who Stavern is. Maybe he's a guy who Don King used to build up some of the Western prospects. Because I think that's what they did with Wilder. I really do. Tank Davis is also a 3-weight WBA regular champion. That title's an absolute joke. If you hand the WBA 100,000, you get one. Yeah, fair point, man. Fair point. Anthony Yard's stamina is shocking. He had a good 8th round against Sergey and was struggling to stay on his feet after that year. I've talked about this on here before. When you get these like bodybuilder type fighters and guys who, have more excess muscle than excess fat, they tend to lack stamina. And Anthony Yard tends to really lack stamina. He's a guy who's more explosive. He's got that David Haye style and that David Haye physique where he's all about twitch, explosive power and big bulky muscles. And that's not going to help you down the stretch. It's actually a lot better to have excess fat because it's more of a energy reserve. You look at a guy like John McDermott or a guy like Andy Ruiz. These guys are fat, but they don't have any problem going 12 rounds. Tyson Fury's a fat slob, but he can go 12 rounds pretty easily at a decent pace. So, yeah, Anthony Yard needs to stop bulking up and lifting weights, and he needs to do some more sparring. Apparently, he doesn't even spar, from what I hear. How are you supposed to gain stamina from boxing if you don't spar, So that's something he's going to have to work on, man. But I'm not his trainer. Here's what it is. I forgot Tank Davis even existed. Yeah, I think I've watched like one Tank Davis fight, and that was his fight against Pedraza. I've never watched a single one of his other fights. They've never interested me. Bunch of rigged nonsense. Don't think it would be possible for Dave Allen to be more athletic than anyone. Yeah, man. He likes his KFC a bit too much, man. I can relate. I really can. Kovalev took Yard's stamina away with the shots to the chest and body. Yeah, man. The jab to the chest and the jab to the body was fantastic, man. Kovalev was really, really accurate. He could completely keep you under control with that. Audley Harrison would spark Bryan right now. Audley's in pretty good shape these days, I think. So you never know. Maybe he could come back and knock out Bryan. It's his destiny, man. It's his destiny. Come back, Audley, and have another go. Become champion, man. Yeah, shout out to Audley Harrison, man. Absolute legend. People say Frank doesn't push Joyce, but Aram says he wants Fury Joyce. Hard to push a boogeyman. Parker just pooped himself. Yeah, it looks as if that fight's not going to happen because I haven't really looked into it, but I've heard apparently Parker has signed an exclusive deal with Sky Sports or something. So, yeah, that fight's not going to happen anytime soon, I don't think. If it does, I'll be surprised. Yeah, that was a big risk. Joe Joyce is a very risky opponent for everybody, and he's one of these really high-risk, low-reward guys because he's not a big name, doesn't really sell a lot of tickets, but he's dangerous, man. Really dangerous fighter. And yeah, it's a shame because the way it's looking, it seems as if Joe Joyce isn't going to get a title shot unless he does get that Fury fight, That's an interesting fight, Joyce against Fury. I'd favour Fury, don't get me wrong. I think he'd win, but it's a very hard fight, and it's one that would probably go the distance. He's not going to just stand in front of him like Dillian Whyte did, or he's not just going to slug away like Wilder did. He's going to have to actually apply a bit of educated pressure, and we'll see how Fury deals with it, man. It's going to be a good fight if it happens. And yeah, I know some of you are going to say, isn't Fury retired? No, of course he's not. I'm hearing Parker won't fight Joyce after all, but Lucas Brown. Do you know, Lucas Brown, look, call me a cynic, right? Call me a cynic here. But that Lucas Brown knockout against Junior Farr, call me a cynic. I'm skeptical. Again, call me a cynic, but that may not have been legitimate, because I don't know, man. Like just look at it for yourself and tell me what you think. I'm skeptical about that knockout, and yeah, if they throw Lucas Brown in with Parker, that'll tell us all we need to know about where his career's going, What do you think is the worst division in boxing right now? Oh, man, I don't know. Oh, yeah, someone just said it there. Bridgerweight. Yeah, of course. but do we even count that as a division? I don't know, man. I don't know. The worst division in boxing. I'll need to think about it. I might get back to you on that one. Let me know what you guys think in the chat. Currently, I'm vacationing in El Salvador. I feel safe with the president putting all the gang members behind bars. Yeah, good for you, man. God bless you. You should travel to El Salvador. Beware of the mosquitoes and the drivers. Do you know what? I'd love to go there one day. I really would. I'd love to check the place out. I need to do some traveling, man. Been thinking about where to go first. Beterbiev broke Vosdick down to the body as well. I think we might see something similar tonight. Smith is a tough fella, but a good body shot can paralyze you. Yeah, Beterbiev's a very persistent pressure fighter, man. He just chops you down and breaks you down with thudding power shots, man. Look out for Jalolov as the next big name in the division. Not always the best to watch, but packs a huge punch, is a very big lump, and doesn't let fighters work on the inside. A bit of a southpaw Vlad. Got to be honest with you, I've never seen him fight, and I'm gonna have to do my homework on him before I give a informed opinion, But we'll see. I think 168 is worse than 160. Probably, yeah, probably. I mean, Canelo was able to become undisputed, so of course it's a terrible division, The Brown knockout looked legit. The KO shot landed hard on the back of the head. I don't know, man. I don't know. I just, again, I'm curious, Flyweight, super middleweight, probably. Yeah, Canelo ruins weight division. Of course he does, because you got to pay all the guys off, and it just puts a downer on the whole bloody division, doesn't it? Not very educated on the lighter weight classes myself, so I'm leaning on one of them. Yeah, same here. I mean, I do watch the light divisions from now and then, the likes of Chocolatito, but it's not something I'm well educated on, I have been watching some fights of. I've been watching quite a bit of Kazuto Ioka recently. He's a guy who I need to watch a lot more, because I actually think he could be, the Japanese dude. I think he could be one of the best fighters in the sport. And been watching some clips of him, and I'm really impressed, The worst division in boxing is the 135 division now that Devin Haney is the champ. The light heavyweight division is my favourite so far. Deserves more attention than it's getting. Yeah, the light heavyweight division has been a good one for quite a while now. Obviously you got Bivol, you got Smith, you got Beterbiev. And those are all going to be good fights, man. If hopefully Bivol gets to fight the winner, because that's a massive fight, and it's for the undisputed and lineal title. So that will certainly make the division seem even better, if we get like a definitive champion, Babic's last fight looked fixed. His legs were jello entire last round. His opponent refused to punch him. I noticed that, actually. I noticed watching that fight that it looks as if he could get him out of there, but for whatever reason he hasn't done it yet. And I'm just like, Alan Babic, I question his chin. I question his He's got good stamina, but I question his overall durability against bigger guys and bigger punchers. He's just so limited to me, and I think he's a knockout waiting to happen. And let's be honest, I mean, he's as good as admitted that himself. So, big up the guy. He knows his level, he knows his role. He's a fun undercard attraction, and he's gonna have some good brawls, some good fights. He's gonna be in entertaining ones, but we'll see what happens, man. Evening, sir. Hope you're happy and thriving. Yeah, man, I'm doing good. Thanks, man. Good to see you here. Had a good day today. It's a nice sunny day here in Glasgow. It's middle of summer now, I think, and yeah, it's been some crazy weather. Went up to see my grandmother. Had a pretty fun day. Went out early. So yeah, how's it going, guys? Jalilov has dominated the heavyweight division in the amateurs for years. Won Olympic gold last year. Oh yeah, of course. I'll need to look into him a little bit more. I don't really know much about him. I'm not really as into amateur boxing as I used to be. So I'll need to definitely check out Jalilov and see how good he is. See if he's legit. Jalilov is more Rigo than Ward by a mile. Is he similar to Rigondeaux style? Well, I guess if he's a southpaw and a puncher, then yeah, there's probably some similarities. Vlad, sorry, not Ward. Did I say Ward? Yeah, Jalilov is more Rigo than Vlad. Flyweight is good because the goat himself, Sonny Edwards, isn't it? Yeah, Smeagol. Do you know the funniest video that Base Boxing Basement ever made was one of those videos where he was talking about Sonny Edwards. I pissed myself watching it, man. Where he was calling him Smeagol and talking about him showing up to his kid's school, and that was funny, man. It really was. Had me in stitches. You ought to call into the BDA boxing show someday. Yeah, why not? I wouldn't mind having a discussion with some of them. I mean, my views on boxing and my opinions are probably very different to most of those guys, and I don't think they would appreciate a lot of my takes. But I've got no issues with them. I have been on the show before. I wouldn't mind jumping on again. Yeah, Inue's looking pretty good, man. Big puncher. Pretty sure Bivol is fighting Zurdo. That's a good fight. Zurdo Ramirez, I always really rated him, but he kind of stagnated a bit and he kind of went off into obscurity, but he's still been active and he's still been winning. So, yeah, that'll be a great fight, man. I think Bivol's a little bit more proven at world level, but Zurdo has a lot more experience. And, ever since he beat Arthur Abraham, he's lingered around world level and he's had some good performances, some good wins, had some performances where he's looked lackluster, but for the most part, he's looked really good. He's tall, he's a southpaw, he's got great high volume and work rate. He's a hard fight for anybody, man. I always thought him and Triple G would have been a great fight. That's one I would have loved to have seen. There was talks of that happening at 168 at one point. Is boxing rubbish now? There is not a lot going on. I go through phases of not really giving a shit about boxing. I go through phases of just wanting to either talk about other things or just ignoring it altogether, because sometimes I'm not in the mood for it. But right now, at least how I feel today, I'm excited about this fight coming up. And yeah, I go through phases of feeling differently about it. Worst division is always Canelo weight. Yeah, of course. Canelo goes into a division, then it sucks. What do you think about Jake Paul in boxing? I don't think anything about Jake Paul. I'd beat Jake Paul. Easy peasy. Nah, Uncle Bob said no to Bivol. Oh, you're on about for Ramirez. Is Ramirez even with Bob? I heard some time ago that he left Top Rank. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I don't know. Unless you're talking about someone else. Do you feel safe in Glasgow? Yeah, absolutely. I feel really safe in Glasgow because I'm hard. I'm just kidding. But no, yeah, I do feel safe in Glasgow. Glasgow's not that bad, to be fair. The closer we get, the more I'm not looking forward to Canelo Triple G3. You will likely see another robbery because neither will knock each other out. To me, I'm looking forward to it because to me it's just a lose-lose situation for Canelo. You know, if Canelo wins, who cares? He was supposed to win. If he loses, we can have fun with that one, you know. So yeah, because we know that the Canelo fans, you know, they can't stay away from my channel. You know, they'll be back no matter what, and I can just have fun with them either way. You know, because I don't have to give Canelo any credit if he wins, and if he loses, I can laugh. So yeah, it's a funny situation for me. You know, I'll enjoy it either way. I heard Wilder was planning on dropping down to the Bridgerweight division. He'd probably get wrecked, since he doesn't have much power at a lower weight. We'll put him in with somebody like Evgeny Romanov. That's a fight that makes sense. You know, he fought at Bridgerweight, and he has a rivalry with Wilder from the amateurs. He stopped Wilder in the amateurs, so let's have that fight. I'd watch it. Sonny Edwards getting KO'd by some Mexican is just a matter of time. Yeah, you know that's coming, man. You know it is. When he gets finally cashed out. What do you think of Fulton? I never watched him, gotta be honest. It shows you how little I give a shit about boxing these days. Never watched Fulton. Wasn't Joe Smith Jr. the guy who KO'd an ancient Bernard Hopkins, or am I mistaken? Would be interesting to hear your opinion on Bernard Hopkins as a fighter. Yeah, he knocked Bernard Hopkins through the ropes and sent him into retirement. It was pretty funny. As for Hopkins as a fighter, he was a very, very dirty fighter, very exploitative, a spoiler, a world-class spoiler. He was very tough, very, very smart, very intelligent, and he knew how to win rounds. You know, very big for the middleweight division, and all his fights were pretty boring, to be honest. I wasn't a fan of watching his fights, but he was effective, and very successful, and had some of the most longevity I've ever seen from any fighter. You know, he fought well into his 40s and did very well. You know, did very well for himself. You know, very, very successful fighter, given his limitations and his late start in boxing. So I've got mixed feelings on Bernard Hopkins, you know. Don't rate him personally. Think Ramirez is tailor-made for a guy like Bivol, stylistically, yeah. Yeah, I'd favour Bivol, but I think it's a hard fight, you know. Zerdo is stupidly big for light heavyweight at 6'3". He should move up and get rid of Lawrence Okolie at cruiserweight or Makabu. Well, he actually used to fight at super middleweight. He beat Arthur Abraham for the WBO title back in the day and had a string of defences. So, you know, he's had a good career and he's had a lot of fights. I think he's had like well over 40 fights now, has he not? So, you know, he's had a long career and a successful career, but he hasn't really had any big fights. I'd say that the biggest name opponent he's fought to this day is Arthur Abraham, and he hasn't done anything since in terms of like really getting his name out there. So it's kind of gone into obscurity, man. But I wouldn't mind seeing him fight at cruiserweight because, like you say, he's definitely got the size for it, you know. Butler versus Inoue, hard fight to call. Shout out to Lee, by the way, for the contribution to the channel, man. I really appreciate that. Thanks a lot, man. Yeah, God bless you. I really appreciate that. And yeah, Paul Butler versus Inoue, hard fight to call. Yeah, Inoue would knock Paul Butler out if and when he chose to. You know, if that fight does happen, then Paul Butler's not got a chance, in my opinion. That's a situation where I would be literally shocked beyond all belief if Paul Butler was able to win because, I mean, stylistically, he's tailor-made for Inoue. You know, he'll stand in front of him with his guard up, and Inoue will just wreck him with hooks around the guard and uppercuts through the middle. And yeah, he will absolutely brutalize Paul Butler. That'll be a cash-out fight for Paul Butler, man. Hopefully it happens in Liverpool. That would be fun. And I like Paul Butler, don't get me wrong, but he gets brutally knocked out in that fight, in my opinion. Zerdo is with Golden Boy. Oh, is he now? Yeah. Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson. Do you mean today? If they were to fight today, probably still Mike Tyson. He probably still wins by knockout. Love watching Destruction. Inoue last week, now Beterbiev. It's a treat, yeah. With guys like Inoue and Beterbiev, you know you're just guaranteed brutality. Those are like just, it's like watching Mortal Kombat or something. Just absolute brutality. Kambosos versus Haney 2. Gonna be like paint drying on growing grass. Yeah, I mean, it's one of them fights that you just want to get out the way, isn't it? It's contractually, signed. From what I hear, I think Kambosos has it in his contract. It was a rematch clause that Haney has to fight him again. So just get it out of the way, I say, and then we can forget about Kambosos when he goes completely into obscurity. Do you know what the odds are for this fight, Nordic? No, I don't know the odds, but I know that Beterbiev is the favourite. I just don't know. I don't know how big a favourite he is, but I'm pretty sure he's the favourite to win. I like to see the rule stipulations before Triple G Canelo. Is Triple G allowed to punch Canelo hard in the face, or is that against the rules? The plot thickens. Yeah, Triple G probably has to just pity patter and play patty cake with Canelo all the time. You think Wilder will fight again? I've no idea, mate. Absolutely no idea. I think for Wilder's own sake, he should retire though before he ends up with CTE. That's providing he doesn't already have it. Give Loma Kamboso. Nah, I don't even want to see that fight. That's a mismatch, mate. Shout out to Base Boxing Basement. Good to see you here, man. God bless. Yeah, it's great to see you here, man. I'm a big fan of the channel, by the way. Good to hear from you live. Yeah, you too, man. You too. Beterbiev Smith is the first fight I'll watch live since Usyk AJ. Yeah, I'm in the don't give a shit about boxing boat as well now. Yeah, like I say, I go through phases of it. Sometimes I give a shit and I'm really into it. Other times I just can't be bothered, It's just, it's that kind of thing, man. Increase the knowledge and the peace. Yeah, thanks, man. God bless you. What do you make of David Benavidez? Do you see Triple G making the Hall of Fame one day? I think Triple G will definitely make the Hall of Fame because his run as middleweight champion was one of the most dominant runs we've ever seen. He broke records, so I definitely think he will be in the Hall of Fame. As for David Benavidez, he's a very inconsistent fighter and a guy who tends to blow hot and cold. Sometimes he looks great, sometimes he looks fat and out of shape, and he's just a guy who needs to get his shit together, Shout out to Daz Pierce for another contribution, man. Really appreciate it. Thanks a lot, man. God bless. You guys are spoiling me today, man. Go on, mate. Thanks for the content. Yeah, absolutely, mate. And I definitely need to get back on track and get a bit more stability with the channel and upload a bit more regularly for you guys. I just need to get my schedule sorted out. But thanks anyway for the contribution, man. God bless. Hopkins was so good with his head. A young Josh Warrington has a photo of him on his bedroom wall. True story, yeah. Wouldn't surprise me, man. Bernard Hopkins was like the original Billy Goat, man, wasn't he? I think Andre Ward definitely learnt a lot from watching Hopkins over the years. He had a very similar style. Butler is champ because Casimero used a sauna. Yeah, that was a real dodgy situation, man. Really, really dodgy. I mean, it didn't make any sense. We're taking his title off him and cancelling the fight because he used a sauna. What? I've never heard anything like that. It seems like a manufactured effort to get the belt off of Casimero and give it to Butler, man. But if Inoue gets his hands on him, I don't think that's going to last very long, For Inoue, Butler should be given a 9-round advantage just to make the fight a bit more even. Yeah, then he still gets taken out in the next couple, Can imagine that, man. I think 7-1. Is that the odds for the fight? Yeah, 7-1. Who should Josh Taylor fight next? And if he ever moves to 147, who does he beat at 147? I don't know, man. I'll reserve judgment on Josh Taylor till I see his next fight. Part of me thinks he's going to get knocked out in his next fight, but we'll see. We'll see. Again, I'll reserve judgment until then. I hear he's going to fight Zepeda. We'll see how that fight goes. Kambosos triggered to rematch clause versus Haney. Not a single soul watched that fight. Yeah, only the Haney fanboys will watch it. I don't think the Australians really will show up to see that one like they did last time. They kind of got swindled with that first one, in my opinion. They really embarrassed Australian boxing with that, the way that they hyped that fight up just for Kambosos to put such a pathetic performance on and get completely schooled, Miles Crouch Anderson is a pussy Pusio, Goldman Sachs, analyst, and a fraudster. Yeah, absolutely, man. Did you see that picture of Derek Chisora the other day? Which one? I don't think I did see it. Whenever I get tired of boxing, something great happens, like Usyk whooping Joshua and Bivol whooping Canelo. Yeah, every now and then they throw us a bone, don't they? They throw us a scrap that just draws us back in, and it reminds us of the good times in boxing, man. Fury versus Wilder 4, I'd watch it. I'd watch Fury versus Wilder 4. Why not? It'd be fun. Never tire of seeing Wilder get his arse kicked, you know? And just having that glimmer of hope that maybe Fury gets knocked out, you know? That Wilder versus Fury fights, I'll never get tired of them, you know? I agree, Triple G was a monster. Where would you rank him in the all-time great middleweights? I think he's easily top 2, top 3 greatest middleweight of all time in his prime. But it's been a very, very long time since we've seen a prime Triple G, you know? I think the last time we saw Triple G at his absolute prime was when he fought David Lemieux. I don't think he's ever really topped that performance, you know. What do you think of the Klitschko's attending the World Economic Forum? I didn't know about that. I'll need to look into it before I say anything about it, you know. That's how Casemiro lost it. Yeah, Casemiro lost he was apparently seen in a sauna, and somehow the British Boxing Board of Control put 2 and 2 together and decided that he was using the sauna to make weight. And apparently, this is the first I've heard, but apparently that's against their rules. And that led to him getting his license suspended or whatever, and his title taken off him. So, yeah, they basically just gave it to Paul Butler against some easy opponent, you know. I don't know, man. It's a dodgy situation. Josh Taylor beats everyone at 147 IMO. I'd love to see him against Conor Benn, yeah. Make the Conor Benn fight, I tell you that. Josh Taylor versus Conor Benn would be fun. I'd watch it. Yeah, shout out to Conor Benn, man. He's Eddie Hearn's next hype, isn't he? You know, Eddie Hearn's really, really getting behind Conor Benn, and I've got a feeling that it's not going to last long. You know, somebody's going to expose Conor Benn soon, and if they don't, you know, he's just going to get put in against one of these American guys, and he's going to get cashed out. You know. Triple G should be rated top 3 middleweights of all time, but the racist fanboys will never give him the credit. Yeah, Triple G came along at an interesting time because, you know, when he started to take over the division, you know, a lot of these tards from America, you know, they wanted to just pretend like that division was weak and that there was no challengers, even though he beat the likes of Martin Murray, who prior to that was considered world class. He beat Matthew Macklin. He beat David Lemieux. You know, all of these guys I'm talking about were all considered world-class fighters at one point, or at least top-level contenders. And when Triple G was just destroying these guys, it's like they all got completely written off, you know? So, again, it was very disingenuous what happened, man. That's some high praise for Josh Taylor after his last performance, man. Like I said, we'll see. We'll see what Josh Taylor looks like in his next fight. We'll see. I just want a double KO between Fury and Wilder. Yeah, that's one of them fights, isn't it, where you just want them both to just lay each other out and be done with the sport, you know? Speaking of Josh Warrington, he needs to clear up the Lara situation. Yeah, I want to see that third fight, because Warrington is the better fighter than Lara, I believe. But he kind of he fucked it with that second fight. Like, he ruined his performance, and you know, he just, oh man, it was a real disappointment, because I was looking forward to that fight, and the bloody clash of heads just ruined it. And I think he needs to clear that up, just to shut people up, you know. I really do. Don't know how old you are, Nordic, but I'm 28, by the way. But the fighters in the 80s were a totally different breed from the fighters of today. The best wanted to test themselves against the best. Money came second to them. Yeah, but I'm sure there were exceptions. I'm sure there were guys in the 80s who were divas. It's just maybe it was a different culture back then, you know. What I will say is that nowadays boxing definitely is more of a worldwide sport than it was, you know. There's a lot more countries involved and a lot more players, you know. A bit of a random question, but thought of former serial British fighter victim Vincenzo Nardiello not long ago. Made me wonder, which fighters had the craziest talent to bottle ratio. Yeah, Nardiello was a weird one. Like, that guy was very dramatic, and he had a lot of like really, really terrible world title fights, but he was quite effective, and he was quite a good spoiler. He was one of those guys. Tried to send a super chat, got rejected as unauthorized, but hopefully we'll get through. Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate it. That's it's the thought that counts, isn't it, man? God bless you. But yeah, I appreciate any contributions, and it's totally fine if you can't do it, man. It's all good with me. The fact that you showed up is good enough for me, man. God bless you. Shout out to Smooth Critical One. Good to see you here, man. God bless. Been a while. He'll be stronger at 147. He definitely will. Look, Josh Taylor is way too big for 140. Let's get it straight. He needs to lose weight, man. I mean, when he's fighting, he needs to really lose weight during his training camps, and he needs to. I wouldn't be surprised if he's using like sweatsuits and if he's using diuretics or something. Or I wouldn't be surprised if he was doing crazy shit like like using a sauna. Yeah, I wonder if he'll lose his license soon, man. Yeah, I wonder if using a sauna will come back to bite him in the ass, because surely he must be doing some crazy stuff to make weight. Because the guy's bigger than Billy Joe Saunders, man. So the British Boxing Board of Control was against Casimiro having a sauna, but got no problem letting Alejandro Ayla fight. Yeah, I know what you're on about, man. That was a disgrace, man. And do you know what's interesting, mate? That card that you're on about, the Ayala fight, I was actually going to go to that card because there was some domestic level Scottish fighters on that card, and I actually live just up the road from that venue. And the reason I never went, because I heard that they were putting the woman fight as the main event. So I refused to go. I refused to support it. And I tell you right now, I'm glad I did. Like, thank God I never went to it, because that was an absolute disgrace, letting that girl fight. I mean, she was already not fit to fight. And, you know how I feel about women's boxing anyway. I think it should be banned. And I've said that from day one. I think there's no market for women's boxing. The only reason that they put it out there is they use it as promotion, and they use it as propaganda for certain agendas. So, yeah, that whole thing was a disgrace, and it just goes to show you that the British Boxing Board of Control are extremely pretentious and are full of it every time they say fighter safety. Every time they talk about fighter safety, they could care less about fighter safety as far as I'm concerned, or at least they don't care as much about it as they do. They pick and choose when it suits them, Would it be better if we went back to 15-round fights? I think it would be more entertaining, and I would have no argument against it, Why not? It's like they say, the championship rounds, those last 3 rounds, they, they separate the men from the boys, Have you seen the shape Ricky Hatton's got himself into now? What do you think about him coming back to fight? Ricky Hatton has a habit of blowing up and down in weight. So sometimes he'll be thin, sometimes he'll be fat as a pig. He's really inconsistent that way. But I hear he's only coming back for an exhibition, and to be perfectly honest, I'm not really that interested in it, to be honest, because it's just a fake fight, and it's just an exhibition. Triple G critics say that he didn't have elite wins, but many of the champs ducked him. He fought the best guys who weren't definitely afraid of him. Yeah, he fought everybody who would fight him, and he dominated the division. He was undisputedly the champion, okay? Even though there were other guys like Billy Joe Saunders with belts, they didn't want to fight him, did they? Right? Billy Joe admitted he would lose if he fought Triple G. So, yeah, to me, Billy Joe was a joke, and Triple G was without a doubt the undisputed champion. Imagine what Golovkin would do to a hype job like Sergio Martinez. Yeah, Triple G would knock out Sergio Martinez, probably within 3 rounds, in my opinion. I like Sergio Martinez, but in my opinion, he gets absolutely destroyed by a prime Triple G. Fighters in the 80s had a notorious drug or alcohol problems. Hearn's dad said promoters were like slave masters. Fighters didn't have as much choice of who they fought. Yeah, that's the thing, mate. Like, back then, fighters obviously didn't get paid as much. And as a result of that, they actually had to earn their pay. They actually had to build a name for themselves. And obviously, they didn't have social media to do so. They had to do it on TV and in small hall shows and stuff like that. So there was a lot more work that had to be done for these guys to get the notoriety that fighters nowadays don't have. Notoriety was a lot harder to come by back then, whereas nowadays you could make a social media account on one of these platforms, and like YouTube or Facebook or whatnot, and you can build a profile there. And promoters nowadays can market you to casuals a lot easier than they could back then. So that there are a lot of, there are various things to look at there. A lot of guys back then were tougher. A lot of guys back then did work harder. But the fact of the matter is, they had to. There wasn't as many opportunities for them. I think Warrington beats Lara in the third fight. Hopefully he fights his Mando, then Lara, and then Lee Wood. Yeah, I'd like to see Lara get Warrington get the Lara fight out the way, and then the Lee Wood fight's a great fight, man. That's fantastic. I'd love to watch it, man. I'd love to see it. It'd be a huge fight in the UK. I might even go to it, man. Did you see that dumb Mike Tyson tried to discredit Bivol win against Canelo? If Canelo used his jab more, it'd be a different fight. He was picking Canelo to win. Mike Tyson doesn't know shit about boxing. Listen, I know that sounds crazy, a legend like Mike Tyson, and somebody like me accusing him of not knowing shit about boxing. But have you ever heard Mike Tyson actually try to break down a fight? He hasn't got a clue what he's talking about, and you find that with a lot of great fighters. Off the top of my head, Cotto, Martinez, Kirkland, Quillen, Canelo, Endam, Froch, Saunders, Eubank all ducked him. Yeah, those are just the ones I could think of. I agree that like that's just off the top of your head. I'm sure there's a lot more that you could think of. I'd like to see Savannah Marshall versus Carissa Shields. I wouldn't. I'd like to see both of them making a sandwich and maybe racing to see who can do the dishes quicker. Women's boxing is so bad that Lauren Price beats a journeywoman. I like that term, and is already ranked in the top 15. Yeah, well, all women's boxers are basically journeymen, or they've got bogus records. Ricky Hatton doing it for the fans who suffered under COVID-19 and lockdown restrictions. Yeah. Yeah, that video you made, man. Again, that was another one that had me in stitches, bro. The Ricky Hatton one. It's all right. I know you've had a bad year, but Ricky Hatton's back. He's doing it for the fans, but you got to pay. But you got to pay $15.99. Go into Home Bargains. Me aggressiveness, me body punching. Before I got knocked out by Manny Pacquiao, I was winning the fight by a country mile. I was winning easily. But the problem is I just got caught. Right hook roll under. What do you think of? I'm not even going to try and, I'm not even going to try and flip in. What am I trying to say? I'm not even going to try and pronounce that, man. I'm not. The referee performance was really bad. He definitely had money on Bermuda. I didn't watch it, man. Didn't watch it. I'm absolutely sick of the BBC, in particular, pushing women's boxing, football, cricket, rugby, as the equivalent of the men's game. Note how the commercial channels stay away from it. Yeah, man, the BBC. I mean, I wouldn't know because I don't watch the BBC because I don't have a license. And, watch the BBC without a license, that's very dangerous. You can end up in prison, man. So, of course, I don't do that. I'm just kidding. Screw the bloody BBC, man. If they come to my door, they're getting bottled. I'll tell you that. Screw the BBC. Imagine if it was Golovkin fighting the Martinez Cotto fought. That'd be brutal. Oh man, that doesn't last. That doesn't last 90 seconds. That's like Mike Tyson versus Peter McNeely, man. Boxing nowadays makes cross-eyed bums like Tevin Farmer multimillionaires just for defending against a few scrubs, and we wonder why we don't see big fights. Yeah, that's why we don't get big fights, because these guys are overpaid for absolute nothing. I mean, Tevin Farmer has done nothing in his career, never beaten anybody worth talking about, yet the guy's made millions of dollars. How? Explain! I mean, I could probably sell more tickets. If I turned pro tomorrow and went to a venue and just told you guys about it on here, I could probably sell more tickets than Tevin Farmer. I'm not even kidding. I'm not even exaggerating. Thoughts on Archie Sharp at 130 and him saying he'll beat Shakur? Nah, Archie Sharp will get completely schooled. No chance. Golovkin versus Arthur Abraham would have been great. That would have been a war. Could you imagine that fight? I would have loved to have seen that fight. And you know what? Even though I think Triple G would have won, and won convincingly on points, Arthur Abraham was the type of guy who had the kind of chin and the kind of power at 160, where that might have been one of them fights where Golovkin might have had to actually survive a scare. Because Arthur Abraham, that dude was dangerous, man. At 160, he was some puncher. You know, he could have probably hurt Triple G, like he could have, but I think Triple G would have outboxed him and won by a wide decision. Little known fact: between fights, Ricky Hatton used to produce a chat show under the pseudonym of Ellen DeGeneres. Edgar Berlanga is a hype job. All he has is power without any technique. Doesn't know how to cut off the ring. Clearly lost to Angulo and only got a £10,000 fine or 10 grand fine for biting him twice. I didn't watch that fight, but I did hear about it. And yeah, I was pretty disturbed by that. You know, hearing that a fighter has bit another fighter, that's never nice to hear. I mean, that's Cash Ali, Mike Tyson, Derek Chisora shit, isn't it? And yeah, that's just it's kind of off-putting. I'm not really interested in watching Edgar Berlanga again. If that's the type of thing he's going to engage in, I just don't really want to see it. So yeah, biting your opponent, that's a no-no. It's not something I ever want to see again. 1 second, I'm just getting something out my fridge. Something very important. And now I'm going to the toilet. You guys get to hear me take a leak. Lucky you. Alright, where was I? When I was writing my comment under your Froch-Calzaghe resume comparison, I realised how much Froch struggled in fights. Very overrated. Yeah, Froch was the type of fighter where he went basically life and death with every borderline world level fighter he ever fought, except for Lucien Bute, weirdly enough. You know, that fight, he all of a sudden looked like a monster. I mean, Froch looked like prime Triple G in the Lucien Bute fight. He looked like Artur Beterbiev in that fight. I'm not even kidding. That was the only fight where Froch had like this mind-blowing, amazing punching power. I wonder why, I wonder why. Got a sneaking suspicion. Of course, it's just hard work and dedication and exercise and proper diet and improving his technique. You know, there's certainly nothing else to it. Dmitry Pirog would have been a formidable challenge for Triple G. He certainly would have. Dmitry Pirog was one of these guys who was like so difficult to hit cleanly because he would stand right in the pocket and he had that sort of shifting style that a lot of European fighters do, but he had kind of an American flair to it, if you know what I mean. Like, he was really flashy and loose, but his technique was like, he still had that European fundamentals, but he also had a lot of that like slickster shit mixed in with it. You know, all that Mayweather stuff. You know, he was a very, very technically good fighter. You know, he was one of these guys who everything he did just flowed beautifully, and the sport seemed to really come naturally to him. So yeah, he was a really good fighter, and it's a real shame we never got to see that fight, because that Triple G fight would have been amazing. I was hyped for it at the time, man. I went mad at a bloke who asked to put a bet on Sinchenko sparking Ricky at 6-1. He forgot and we both missed out. That was tragic. Oh man, yeah, that Sinchenko Ricky Hatton knockout, that made a lot of people cry. It did, because during that fight, there was a lot of nostalgia for a lot of the British boxing fans who followed Ricky Hatton over the years, and yeah, a lot of people thought that he was in control of the fight. I didn't personally. Watching that fight, I thought that Sinchenko was winning. I had him clearly beating Hatton. I didn't think that before the fight, but during the fight, while I was watching it, you know, while I actually rewatched it as well, like Sinchenko seemed in control, but yeah, the commentators and everything seemed to convince people that Ricky was winning. And then when he got caught with that body shot, it was ironic, because that's the kind of shot that he used to stop guys with. But then, of course, he ended up getting stopped with it himself. And yeah, it was quite sad to watch. But at the end of the day, though, it was a good win for Shevchenko. You know, he got himself a career best win, and you know, he got some pretty big paydays off of the back of that fight. So it was good for him. The great Ricky Hatton impression. Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate it. Do you know if Ricky found Mike Tyson in bed with his wife, he took him in? If I found Mike Tyson in bed with my wife, I'd tuck him in. Forget about me aggressiveness, me body punching, and me Manchester City. Ricky Hatton, like the guy's become basically a satire of himself, hasn't he, these days, Ricky Hatton, man. He's really embarrassed himself. Blows me away that you need a license for a TV over there. That's some science fiction oppression. Yeah, it definitely is, man. But I'll tell you one thing, they come to my door, and, well, they probably won't come to my door again, but if they ever do, they're in for a rude awakening, I'll tell you that. If Ricky Hatton found Warwick Davis in bed with his missus, he took him in. Oh, man. Let's see. Sorry, Lee Talks Boxing. Yeah, Charles Adamu, Matthew Chavalobani, and Brian McGee. All nightmare nights for Froch. Then he starts wearing Louis Retso gloves and discovers brutal power. Yeah, that's the thing. Charles Adamu nearly beat Froch. Flipping Matthew Barney went 12 rounds with him. Brian McGee made it to the 11th and then got sucker punched. He never had this kind of power until he was, 35 years old, and he fought Lucien Bute. All of a sudden he has power. I don't buy that, man. Nordic taking a leak. This was worth the £3 on its own. Yeah, exactly, man. You got your money's worth, man. Money well spent. Did you see Jossie Vargas take another L on the Belanga undercard? Lost to somebody called Dakota Linger. Is Jossie Vargas, is he the guy that fought Zepeda? He's the guy that Zepeda knocked out, isn't he? I'm pretty sure he's the guy that got knocked out by Zepeda. Yeah, that guy turned out to not be very good. Fighters back in the day trained to be physically more dominant than they are today. They do more technical training. I feel like Joe Smith Jr. is more old school, like Marciano, but Beterbiev has both. Yeah, Joe Smith Jr., obviously the guy's a blue-collar worker, a construction guy. Obviously he's very strong, very, very tough, very durable. And that comes across in his fighting style, Oh man, see when you take an iron brew bottle out the freezer, and it's it's freezing cold, but it's not quite icy. It's just that right temperature, and you pour it into a pint glass. Oh, it's so nice, man. I've been waiting for that all day. Been out all day, and it's been hot, man. And yeah, I was waiting for that. Oh, that was nice. You're gonna have to bear with me, guys. I need another one of them. Oh, that was nice, man. That was nice. Anyway, let me stop orgasming over Iron Brew and let me get back to this chat. Matthew Barney had the second best chin in boxing history after Chris Rock. Yeah, Chris Rock he had a chin like a prime Marius Wack, man. I want a suit of armor made of that guy's chin. How do you think Golovkin would have done at super middleweight? I highly doubt he'd beat a guy like Kessler, but he'd probably beat Froch. I think Kessler might have been a bit too big. Kessler was massive for a super middleweight. He was huge. And not only that, he had an incredible chin. Like Mikhail Kessler, he had probably the most underrated chin I've ever seen in boxing. That guy was tough. And he was also very strong, very powerful. He wasn't as skilled as Triple G, not even close. But I think his size and his power at his prime, let's see the version of Kessler that Calzaghe fought, that would have been a hard fight for Golovkin. But I think he would outbox Froch. And just beat him by a wide decision, because Froch can't really fight on the inside, and Triple G's very good on the inside, and Triple G's the bigger puncher, he's quicker, just a better skilled fighter, and I think he would beat Froch, but he would struggle with Kessler, man. That's a hard fight. Who's your favourite Scottish fighter? I like Gary Cornish. Was schooling Gage early on. Seriously though, I like Jim Watt, especially when he said McClellan was a ball job. Yeah, he was like, he's quit. He's shaken to his boots. Yeah, I like Jim Watt. He's cool, man. His fights weren't that entertaining, but he was a good fighter. My favourite Scottish fighter, personally, this is just me speaking here, probably Scott Harrison. There's something about Scott Harrison that I've always found like really relatable. Maybe it's because he's like just a hard man from Glasgow. You know, I kind of relate to him. You know, but yeah, he's probably my favourite to watch. I think he was the most entertaining. I don't think he was the best Scottish fighter ever, but he was definitely the most entertaining. I actually think the best Scottish fighter of all time was probably Ken Buchanan, at least in terms of his accomplishments. You know, he was obviously undisputed in his era. He beat Jim Watt, and he was also he also gave Duran a pretty tough fight too, even though he lost. So I think it's safe to say he was probably the best Scottish fighter ever. But of course, Josh Taylor's obviously still fighting, and he's still got a lot to prove and a lot to achieve. So, you know, maybe he could become the best Scottish fighter. We'll see. But my personal favourite is Scott Harrison. He's my personal favourite. Obviously, the most accomplished Scottish fighter ever, though, is Ricky Burns, without a doubt. And I don't even think he's like the top 4 Scottish fighters ever, but he's the most accomplished just based on consistency and longevity. You know, he's a 3-weight champion, which had never been done before in Scottish boxing. So, yeah, you know, he's probably the most accomplished. But again, you know who my favourite is. Even Froch in his special gloves couldn't hurt Chris Rock. Yeah, man, Froch would need to have like Wreck-It Ralph hands in order to hurt Chris Rock. I had Sinchenko Hatton dead level after 8 and Sinchenko going ahead in the 9th. Yeah, it was a close fight, but I thought Sinchenko was winning. You know, he was just landing the more effective punches, I think. Hatton was outworking him, but every punch Sinchenko landed had an effect, and he was busting up Hatton's face all night, man. Louis Retzo, he asked Froch for his gloves back repeatedly, yeah. Sorry, where am I? Imagine how insane it would be if Smith and Beterbiev make it to the final bell in an all-out war. That'll probably make the light heavyweight division popular. Yeah, if that's like a great fight that goes the distance and both guys go down, that'll definitely bring a lot of attention to the division. But I still think a lot of people would be looking for sort of an American, or like, when I say American, you know what I mean. I don't mean a white American like Joe Smith. They'd be looking for a guy like another Andre Ward or another Marcus Brown to beat Beterbiev if he wins. Obviously, if Smith wins, you know, he'll get a lot of support and he'll become a big name in the American boxing fraternity. But if it's a great fight, like, the division as a whole might get more notice, especially with Bivol still kicking around, you know. What do you think? What do you make of Andre Ward's career? Do you think he's overrated or underrated? I think he's overrated. I think with a fair referee and fair judges, I think Andre Ward would have lost several fights. He would have lost to Kessler by DQ. He would have lost to Beaker. He would have lost to Kovalev both times. I just think that, look, he was a good fighter, don't get me wrong, but he wasn't a great fighter. He was a great cheater and a great spoiler. Ricky Hatton hates dwarves. His ex-girlfriend went out with a midget. Ricky never thought she'd stoop so low. Oh, man. Yeah, shout out to Ricky Hatton. My aggressiveness, my body punching, my Manchester City. Ricky Hatton. Are you self-trained or do you have boxing trainers? I have at least 3 different boxing coaches, one for strength training and cardio condition. Any tips or advice you can give? I haven't been trained by a trainer in I don't know how many years. When I was a kid and I used to do a bit of boxing, I trained with there was a guy called Jav Khalik. He was a IBO champion from Nottingham. Like, I never competed or anything, but I used to go on the pads with him and all that, and he taught me some stuff. And there was another coach I had, a guy called David Savage, who was a former pro. And those were just a couple of the I've had a few coaches. Those were just a couple of the ones I had when I was sort of a teenager and I was trying to get into boxing. But these days, like for years and years, I haven't had a coach. I just, whenever I box or whenever I go to the gym, I just do my own thing, you know. I was never that easy to get along with, if you know what I mean. I was no coach ever liked me, put it that way. I never got on with any of them. Have you heard of Bruce Carrington? Great American prospect fighting on the Beterbiev card in a few hours. No, I've never heard of him. I've never heard of that guy, but I might check him out. Rooting for Union Joe tonight. He has a chance of stopping Beterbiev early, but Beterbiev should stop Smith in rounds 8 to 9. Yeah, that's pretty much how I see the fight. I think it's going to be a late stoppage for Beterbiev, but I give Joe Smith a good chance. You know, he's got a good puncher's chance. Golovkin should go full Ward to beat Kessler, yeah. But like, Ward needed to go Ward to beat Kessler. He needed to use his head and his clinching and all that because he couldn't box Kessler. Because Kessler was too big and too powerful, too dangerous. So that was why Ward had to cheat to win it, you know. Kessler was a hard bastard and had proper power as well as size and durability. Was Calzaghe's best win by quite a distance. Declined by the time of the second Froch fight, yeah. Even going into the first fight, he was past his prime, because going into that first fight, he obviously had the disaster against Andre Ward. And I don't think Kessler could even spar for most of his training camp for the first fight, because if you remember rightly, in the Ward fight, Kessler picked up an eye injury. And of course, he had 3 cuts on his face. He had like 2 cuts above his eyes and 1 below his eye. And as a result of that, going into the Froch fight, Kessler had a lot of like problems in his training camp, and I don't think he was even at his prime in the first fight. But for the second fight, he was completely shot, and he beat Froch in the first fight and beat him convincingly. But the second fight was very, very close, and Froch just outworked him and beat him in a close fight. You know, very close though. Scottish fighters. Ken Buchanan has to be the best Scottish fighter ever. Yeah, probably. A lot of people consider him to be the best Scottish fighter ever, even though, as weird as it sounds, like I said, Ricky Burns is probably the most accomplished Scottish boxer ever. Because, like I said, he's a 3-weight champion. Not only that, he's had several upset wins. He beat some of the best guys in the lightweight and super featherweight division at the time. So yeah, he's definitely the most accomplished. But a lot of people would argue that Ken Buchanan was the best. What do you think are the deciding factors in fighters having a good or a bad chin? Well, a lot of it is to do with your to do with your conditioning, if you know what I mean. Like if you're in great shape, if you've done a lot of sort of like resistance training and a lot of sparring, and you can kind of keep your cool under pressure, just being in good mental and physical shape, you're more likely to be able to take a shot. Like all you need to do is, if you look at fighters who get tired, who don't have very good stamina, they don't take punches as well, do they? So obviously, if you're getting tired and you can't really tense up for shots as easily, that's going to make your chin weaker. There's obviously other aspects to it. Some people just have bigger necks and are able to brace for impact a little bit more. Some people actually don't have a good chin, but they have good powers of recovery. You look at a guy like Steve Cunningham, for example. He's a guy who gets knocked down. Tyson Fury is the same. Guy who gets knocked down, but gets up and recovers very quickly and gets a second win. Whereas if you look at a guy like AJ, when he gets hurt, it takes a long, long time for him to recover. Same as somebody like David Price. When he gets hurt, it's pretty much all over. He doesn't really recover quickly. So, there's a lot of, it's not really an exact science, but there's a lot of variables to it, But I think just being well conditioned and being trained for durability and knowing how to tense up and keep your chin tucked, that has a lot to do with it. Triple G is able to take shots really well by just keeping his chin tucked and keeping his balance, That's pretty much all there is to it, Wilder versus AJ got derailed by Fury and Usyk. Wouldn't it be funny if Crawford Spence got derailed by Josh Taylor and Virgil Ortiz? I hope that happens. Yeah, that would be good. Although there's a bit of uncertainty about both of them. Like Virgil Ortiz, he's had some health problems from what I hear. I also hear he's struggling to make weight. And with Josh Taylor, his stock's at an all-time low at the minute. So we're gonna have to see how he looks in his next fight, before I make a judgment on that. Nick Campbell is the best Scottish fighter of all time. I tell you one thing, he might actually be the best Scottish heavyweight of all time, and I'm not even joking there. I know that sounds hilarious, but Scotland doesn't have it doesn't have a track record of producing very good heavyweights. That's what I will say. Shout out to Red Glove Militant. Good to see you here, man. God bless you. Big fan of the channel, man. Red Glove Militant was one of my first ever subscribers, and yeah, he's been going through a bit of a hard time lately. So go over to his channel and show him some love, man. Great to see you here, man. God bless. In the pantheon of great Scottish fighters, Gary Cornish obviously deserves a mention. Had WBU title potential all over him. Well, do you know what? Gary Cornish might be the second best Scottish heavyweight of all time after Nick Campbell. Oh man, yeah. Nick Campbell's the Scottish heavyweight champion, come to think of it. Ward is 0-32 by DQ with a fair ref. Yeah, that makes sense, man. That really makes sense. What do you make of Marcus Brown? Where does he go from here? Marcus Brown is, again, he's a bit of a spoiler. Had a bit of talent, but seems weak mentally, in my opinion. And we've pretty much found his level now. I mean, he lost to a 40-year-old John Pascal, got absolutely broken down and showed his true colours against Beterbiev. So, yeah, and he also got a gift decision earlier. So, yeah, I never really rated him that highly. But he's a talented spoiler, and he'd probably be in some fun fights. I bet they'll give us Felix Cash versus Liam Williams next. Who'd you have in that one? I'll take Liam by KO. Yeah, I would favour Liam Williams in that fight, probably by stoppage. I think he's just more proven and more durable, and I think he'd probably win it. That's how I see it right now. But we'll see. Josh Warrington has a DVD of Ward versus Kessler, has watched it 300 times. Blueprint for winning world title fights. True story, yeah. I think he's watched those Angry Ram videos. He just bashing his head against the wall, man. That's how Josh Warrington trains, isn't it? He should have like a glove on his head. Remember how Froch took credit for Kessler's eye injury? Yeah. Froch said, like when Kessler had the eye injury and he pulled out, Froch said that was revenge for taking his title. You know, he's such a nice guy, isn't he, Froch? You know, he also said that if he, going into the Glenn Johnson fight, he said if he could cut his throat, to achieve victory, he would do it. You know, that was what he said. He also said he wanted to drill his glove into somebody's head. You know, but he would never load it. He would never load his gloves, though, would he? That he's just not that type of guy. Ricky Burns should be in the Hall of Shame for losing 12-0 to Bundongo. Do you know what, mate? That pissed me off something fierce. Like, see when that fight happened, and Ricky literally did nothing in that fight. Didn't even try. He made Ndongo look like a prime Sugar Ray Robinson in that fight. Like, that was embarrassing, and it's a shame because Ricky had a pretty good career prior to that, and you know he'd been a multiple-time champion. And going in against Ndongo, I don't know what happened. I don't know what he was playing at that night. He didn't even try. Then you have Khan. Ndongo is greatest of all time. Gage is just trash, useless. I wouldn't say he's trash, but he's definitely got a lot of problems, mentally and physically, man. Best weak chin, good recovery guy I saw was Carl Thompson. Worst I ever saw was probably Frank Bruno. Amir Khan merits a mention, though, yeah. Let's not forget Gary Cornish. Best weak chin, great recovery guy. Yeah, Carl Thompson, he was a guy, he'd get dropped, he'd get hurt, but he would always come back, man. That guy was incredibly tough. If you guys want to see a great comeback in a fight, check out Carl Thompson versus David Haye. David Haye absolutely batters him in the first few rounds and throws everything but the kitchen sink at him, and Carl Thompson recovers, and actually recovers very well and gets a stoppage. It was very impressive, man. No Ndongo slander, yeah. Starving Marvin. Burns beating Kevin the Cockfeeder Mitchell was class, yeah. Do you know what was great about that fight? Like that was actually that was the only time I remember, like during Ricky Burns' entire career, that was the only time that I remember the Scottish like boxing media actually getting behind him. Like that fight got a lot of attention, and it was a really, really big deal. And I remember a lot of people at the time, even though I think Burns was a slight favourite, a lot of people were picking Kevin Mitchell to win that fight. And there was something about that fight. Like, for whatever reason, it was massive. Like, it was bigger than Burns' other fights, even when he fought better opponents than Mitchell. That fight, for some reason, that one in particular, that fight was huge, and it had a lot of attention around it, And that was in the SECC, which is just up the road from me again. It was a really, really good performance. That might have been Burns' career best performance, I think, when he beat Kevin Mitchell. And also, going into that fight, Kevin Mitchell had never been down before. He had been stopped. He was stopped against Michael Katsidis, but he'd never been on the canvas before. That was the first time in his career. So that was an underrated win for Ricky Burns, because if you remember rightly, Kevin Mitchell went on to give Linares a really tough fight and actually dropped him and almost beat him. So that was in my opinion, beating Mitchell at that stage of his career in the fashion that he did was probably Ricky's best performance, I think. Yeah, God bless you, man. Yeah, everybody go subscribe to Red Glove Militant, man. OG of the YTBC, and again, one of my longest viewers on here, man. God bless you. If Catterall was under Al Gaiman, he would have won the Taylor fight. Gaiman pays off refs. Yeah, of course he would have. If he was protected by like the establishment, of course he would have won. Had to come on when I saw you live. Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Yeah, God bless you. That's a good fight. Cash Williams is a 50-50. Either guy isn't that good anymore. I think Williams is just more proven at the moment, Only simps casuals don't see greatest of all time status in Dumbongo and Dongo. Yeah, Starving Marvin and Dongo, man. One second. Sorry about that. Right, where was I? I noticed a lot of Puerto Ricans have glass chins. Wonder what's to it. I wonder. Is it maybe like during the Puerto Rican amateur program? Do they maybe like malnourish them or something? Because I heard something like that to do with the Cuban boxing program in the amateurs. They apparently don't feed them enough, and that's why they end up with glass chins like Rigondeaux, I don't know. Maybe. Who wins in a headbutting contest? Josh Warrington, Marcus Brown, or a Ram? I don't know, man. That's like a three-way tie, isn't it? I'd say probably Marcus Brown. He seems a little bit more slick with his headbutts, and he does more damage with his headbutts too. But Josh Warrington's pretty good with them too, He tends to cut his opponents. If AKA Skins was Scottish, he would be the best. Would he be the best heavyweight ever? Given the fact that he battered Gage around the ring on many occasions. Did better than Gary Cornish. Oh man, that's disturbing. Yeah, AJ's into some nasty stuff, man. He really is. Froch has something of a personality disorder about him. Some of the sick stuff he's come out with. There are plenty of decent human beings who are also elite level boxers, so there's no excuse. Yeah. Carl Froch. That guy's he's a dark individual. That's what I will say. Very, very spiteful. Very, very disturbing with some of the stuff he used to come out with, and a lot of people tended to ignore some of the stuff he used to say. Like, he used to say a lot of right degenerate stuff about his opponents and even guys in like divisions below him. Like, do you remember the type of things he used to say about Amir Khan? I remember when Amir Khan and Ricky Burns and some of those guys were world champions at the same time he was, and he used to just talk shit about these guys, and particularly Khan, because he was really jealous of the fact that Khan had a lot more fans than he did. And he used to say some right disturbing shit, man. He really did. How badly would Jack call the police Catterall lose to Prograis? Oh, Prograis would beat the crap out of Catterall. The only way Catterall even makes it through that fight is if he's allowed to lean all night, man. Mate, screw Jack Catterall. I'm sick and tired of hearing about that guy. I'm sick of seeing his face. I don't ever want to see him fight again. He reminds me of Rigondeaux. He reminds me of Kid Galahad. He's one of those mooches, if you know what I mean. One of those leeches that boxing could do without. Just stealing a living from boxing. Boxing could do without people like him, man. Well, Fury derailed Wilder despite coming off rehab. Usyk beat AJ in only his third fight. So I can see Taylor beating a protected bum like Crawford and making it an embarrassing exposure. I favour Taylor to beat Crawford, don't get me wrong, but I would like to see how good he is in his next fight. I would like to see if he still has the love for the sport, because, again, his last fight, it looked to me as if, he just didn't really take it seriously. So hopefully Taylor gets back on track, and hopefully he actually gets the same mentality that he had before he became champion, and we'll see. We'll see how well he does in his next fight, I'm looking forward to it. The only way I would ever watch women's boxing is if they're given a pillow instead of gloves and G-string thongs instead of boxing trunks, yeah. They can have a pillow fight, why not? Can't be criticising my boy Josh Warrington. I like Josh Warrington. I think he's good, but there's no doubt the guy likes to use his head, You ever seen Toy Story 2, where Rex goes, "I don't want to use my head." That's like Josh Warrington, man. AJ loves getting beaten up by white guys. Yeah, well, he's the superior race, though. So how can he? It's scientifically impossible for him to lose to a white guy. They just got lucky. Warrington is a dirty Billy Goat. Did Kiko Martinez dirty? Is Sonny Edwards white Muhammad Ali, or is it Hughie Fury? No, it's Hughie Fury. Hughie shades of Ali Fury, man. Apparently, Carl Froch is a conspiracy theorist now. Yeah, apparently he is. I haven't looked into that. I don't know what it is he believes and all that. But apparently he's into a lot of conspiracies, and he's rubbing people up the wrong way with all that. I'll probably end up liking him if he says something I agree with. I'll all of a sudden become a Carl Froch fan. I wish Jack Catterall would retire. We might see him working at McDonald's drive-thru. Yeah, you want a cola with that? By the way, I beat Josh Taylor. Yeah, that'll be it. You'll see Jack Catterall outside of the job centre, with like a half bottle of Buckfast, pissing up against a wall, and then you'll go back and he'll be like lying in his own piss, and he'll be like, "I beat Josh Taylor. I beat Josh Taylor. Did you know I beat Josh Taylor?" The people walk past, they'll throw him like a bit of change, like you throw your loose change, like a 10 pence. And he'll be like, "Hey, by the way, I beat Josh Taylor." And you're like, don't look at him, don't talk to him, just keep going. That's Catterall in 30 years, man, if he doesn't sort himself out, Is what it is, man. Apparently, Sonny Edwards is saying that he's fighting Junto Nakatani. I don't know if he's bullshitting, but either way, he's getting embarrassed. Yeah, that could be the fight. He finally ends up, putting a stop to his run as champion. But yeah, Sonny Edwards, it's like base boxing basement says. Sonny Edwards, he might be world champion, but he's 5'3" and he's 8 stone. I'd still kick his ass, all right? If Sonny Edwards punched me in the face, I'd laugh at him. I'd piss myself laughing, and I'd probably put his face in the dirt, And I wouldn't throw a punch at him because he's too cute, man. He's like, it'll be like hitting a child or hitting a puppy. It's just, I wouldn't do that, man. It's too, that's sad. I wouldn't do that. Yeah, in the Puerto Rican amateur boxing system, we do extreme weight cuts. That could be the problem. That could be why a lot of them can't take a punch, because they do extreme long-lasting damage to their bodies by trying to make weight. You shouldn't. That's the thing. Kids shouldn't be forced to make weight. I think that they should just be doing light contact sparring, and if they are going to have competitions, fight at their natural weight. Forcing a kid to make weight, I think, is terrible. I really do. Kids are too young for that. That's an adult thing. Kids should be fighting at their natural, walking around weight. They shouldn't be forced to drain at all, man. AJ and Wilder got sat at the kids' table really quick. Yeah, yeah, they did, man. Now it's all about Usyk and Fury. Usyk and Joshua rematch still on. I don't think it's confirmed, but all indications are that it's going to happen. But we'll see. Tell them to stop that. Then, tell them to stop that. Then these chins are terrible. Yeah, man, they need to stop forcing kids to make weight. That's completely unnatural. It's child abuse, man. They need to stop it. The reason I believe Puerto Rican fighters aren't doing well at all is because of the spiritual state of Puerto Rico is at an all-time low. It's very common for men to cheat on their wives with mistresses. Yeah, that's not a good thing, man. They need to get right with Jesus Christ, man. They need to needs to be some evangelism going on in that country, man. They all need to repent. What size hat do Adam Smith and Ben Salom prefer? Well, Adam Smith's the child catcher. Puerto Rico needs to get right with God. They need, yeah, exactly. They need to, if they want to get back to being one of the best at boxing again, that's just the way I see it. They are undisciplined, they party and not train hard, yeah. Well, I mean, if that's the culture there, then it seems as if they're not going to produce many world champions, because, again, it's all about discipline, isn't it? There needs to be a culture of discipline and forcing them to make weight, yeah, that takes a lot of discipline, but it also does irreversible damage, I think they need to work hard and they need to actually dedicate themselves to their craft if they want to achieve anything, Junta Nakatani is all wrong for Sonny, he'll get stopped. Yeah, he'll probably lose. Where was I? Sonny Edwards is actually a good fighter. As a man, though, he's an oil drilling disgrace. Simple as, yeah. I got no argument, man. I got no argument. The only Puerto Rican boxer that isn't a fraud is Subriel Matias. Yeah, that guy is scary, man. I want to see Subriel Matias versus Jack Catterall, man. So stick Subriel Matias in the ring with Jack Catterall, and just like tie Jack Catterall's hands behind his back. And put him on his knees and give Subriel Matias a sledgehammer, and I'll watch that, man. That'll be fun. I would enjoy it. So, Sonny Edwards' hair, facial hair is a crime against humanity. I'll tell you, it's better than my facial hair. That's all I'll say. Puerto Ricans know who God is. They just won't follow him. Exactly. They know who God is, man. They just need to... They need to open the Bible. They need to repent. They need to get themselves some Chick-fil-A, and they need to get their minds right, man. They really do. If AJ gets sorted out again by Usyk, particularly by stoppage, then is it game over for him, or will they give the cash cow another milking? I think if he loses again, he'll probably have a cash-out fight, maybe like a big fight in the O2 Arena or at Wembley or something, against like a Chisora or somebody like that. Then he'll retire. But if he wins, then they'll chug on with the promotion for the Tyson Fury fight. That probably still won't happen for another couple of years, or so. Who first called Adam Smith the child catcher? I remember hearing that a while ago. I don't know. I've heard it in multiple videos, and I've seen it in multiple comment sections. It became a meme a few years ago, I think. The culture right now in there is rap culture, so there you go. Yeah. I guess that's it, and that just promotes crime, doesn't it? And it promotes, like, materialism. So boxing needs to, you need to have a certain amount of humility, I think, to make it in boxing, at least at that level, at the amateur level where you're turning pro. Yeah, Subriel Matias is the real deal. Another one that brings ultimate violence. He's dangerous, man. He's a dangerous fighter. I wouldn't want to fight him, I tell you that. And I want Jack Catterall to fight him. Did Miguel Cotto's son become the director of the Puerto Rican boxing? I'm not sure. Somebody in the comments will probably let you know about that. Base Nordic realizing oil drilling is bad. Do you know the first time I heard the term oil drilling was from boxing basement. I'd never actually heard that before until I heard him say it. Never heard it before then, honestly. Or if I did hear it, I don't remember. Danny Garcia is the only Puerto Rican with a great chin I can think of, but I guess he didn't come up in their amateur system. Yeah, isn't Danny Garcia? I know that he's Puerto Rican in terms of his like lineage, but isn't he? Wasn't he born in America? I could have gotten that wrong. I'm sure one of you guys will let me know, but I'm pretty sure he grew up in America, and he's pretty much an American in terms of his development through the amateurs and whatnot. Caleb Plant, David Lemieux, Otto Wallin, Sonny Edwards. Why is there so much oil drilling in boxing at the moment? I don't know. Maybe that's something that they're trying to promote. I don't know. Maybe it's kind of like what you see in adverts. You see it a lot of the time in movies, and you see it a lot of the time in adverts. And maybe they're just trying to. I mean, maybe I'm looking into it a bit too much. It could just be like maybe it's just completely natural that they ended up that way, but maybe not. You know, maybe it is part of the whole social engineering. I don't know, man. I haven't really looked into it, so I don't know, man. And Ege KO's Usyk. No way will they let him lose. Well, they let him lose once, to be fair, but I mean, you made the point in your video, Lee, that AJ has recently signed with DAZN, and I'm sure DAZN have plans for him. So, yeah, maybe there'll be some skullduggery afoot in the Middle East to make sure that Usyk doesn't win. I don't know, but if Usyk doesn't win, like if Usyk gets robbed, that's not going to be a good look because, you know, we know what's going on in his country right now. You know, they're the ultimate victims, aren't they? So you don't want to screw over one of his people, you know. Xander Zayas, anyone? Yeah, Xander Zayas is looking pretty good. Is he Puerto Rican? I might have heard that somewhere, but yeah, he's a pretty good prospect. He's Minimax's mate, isn't he? Xander Zayas, and so far he's looking pretty good. So yeah, he's one. I'm from the same postcode area as Jack Catterall, and they temporarily renamed a pub here the Catterall Arms. Sounds a bit desperate to me. He needs to bank the kudos and move on. Yeah, I saw that on Twitter. That was cringy. They literally took the sign down and put up the Catterall Arms. What does that even mean? The Catterall Arms. I'm getting so sick and tired of that guy, man. I'm getting sick and tired of the short bus riders saying that he dominated that fight. Calm down, man. Like. Put that guy in the ring with Subriel Matias. Give Subriel Matias a sledgehammer, and just please get that clown out of boxing. I'm sick and tired of hearing his name. Sick and tired of his face. Yeah, screw Jack Catterall, man. Throw Jack Catterall, Guillermo Rigondeaux, Kid Galahad, and all those guys. Throw them guys in a hole and let them tear each other apart, and then the winner can fight Subriel Matias. You know, this is what it is, man. No way Usyk will let himself lose. He's going to wreck that boy. I think as long as it's a fair fight, I can't see Usyk losing. Usyk should win it. Xander Zayas. If AJ loses, he'll probs fight Wilder. And to be honest, I think he'd win. Really don't think Wilder is what people claim he is. I think Wilder sucks. I think Wilder had a manufactured career. I think his fights were fake. And, yeah, I've always favoured AJ over Wilder, but AJ has the power. AJ could win. I believe Puerto Rico is predominantly Catholicism like Mexico, but the only difference is their culture is more wicked and ungodly. Puerto Rican women these days, whores that don't want kids, pathetic. That's a shame, man. It really is. I mean, it's the same over here, man. It's the same in the West. A lot of people nowadays just they lack God, you know. They don't have those values that some of us do, you know. And look, I'm not perfect either. I've made mistakes. I've done bad things, but I try to repent. And you know, it is what it is, man. I take my faith very seriously, and a lot of people don't understand it. But back in the day, that used to be the norm, you know. It is what it is, man. I don't know what can be done about it. He was raised in Philadelphia. Danny Garcia, you're on about. Danny Garcia's from Philadelphia. Yeah, I thought he was from America somewhere. Yeah, from Philadelphia, isn't he? Miguel Cotto's son is a flamboyant abnormality. Well, yeah, Cotto used to wear pink shorts and stuff, so maybe that led to it. Yeah, his lineage is Puerto Rican. Yeah, I see. So Puerto Rican lineage, but an American citizen, basically. I worry for Zayas now that I saw him cry. Do you know, I actually cried yesterday for the first time in a long time. And it might not be why. It's actually quite embarrassing. I'm not even going to say why, at least not now. But I heard something that made me cry yesterday, and it was weird. My missus looked at me like, "Did that actually make you cry?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it did." And it says a lot about me as a person. Long time no see. Was crying like a baby because he couldn't fight. Is that why? I didn't even know he did cry, yeah. Jack Harrell's face is annoying at this point. He's almost as overrated as U-Bomb Jr. UK needs to stop promoting hype jobs. I'll tell you what the UK needs to do is the UK needs to stop promoting spoilers and cheaters and get behind actually guys who come to fight. Not a guy who comes to just grab and lean and cheat and push and spoil and complain and run. Support guys that actually fight. You know, at least say what you want about Josh Taylor. The guy fights, okay? Say what you want about a guy like flipping Artur Beterbiev. You know, he fights. You know, I'm sick and tired of seeing these guys that just show up to stink the joint out and to survive and get through a fight and hope to get the decision. I'm sick of seeing guys steal a living from boxing. I'm sick of seeing guys like Rigondeaux, you know, and flipping Kid Galahad who did this against Warrington. That was the same situation. They get a title opportunity, and rather than try to take the title, they just try to steal the title. They try to nick the title. They try to survive and spoil and be gifted the title, if you know what I mean. I want to see these guys actually take risks and actually earn their keep, if you know what I mean. I don't want to see all this nonsense. I want to see them earn their pay, earn their opportunities, and I want to stop all the self-entitled nonsense in the sport of boxing, man. I really do, because I'm getting sick of it. I've had enough of it. Wales really wrecked the narrative when they beat Ukraine 1-0 to qualify for the World Cup. They were supposed to take a pasting like the Scots did, but didn't read the script. I don't follow football, but yeah, that just goes to show you, doesn't it? They can sometimes throw you a bone, you know. Weird. What's weird? Was it the thing about the name on the pub? Wilder was a hype job of a lifetime. Yeah, oh yeah. Wilder's the ultimate hype job, man. Yeah, screw Wilder. Wilder was a complete embarrassment, a disgrace, man. He was a joke, man. It's a sad reality when Wilder faced a shot to bits Audley Harrison. That was the best opponent he faced up until that point, and he was 32-0 at the time. Yeah, I think for his 30-second fight, he fought Jason Gavin, and that was considered like a step up. But Wilder was only a baby, though. He was still learning. He was still inexperienced. That's what we kept hearing. We're still hearing that to this day, man. To this day. I just answered your question today. Has there ever been a more illiterate fighter than Wilder? Other than James Toney, of course. Wilder's on an island, boy, as a heavyweight with power. Gage batters twerking Wilder. Ryan Garcia's always crying. Crying Ryan, yeah. Crying Garcia's always crying. What did Oscar De La Hoya do to him and his kids? Oh, man, I think him and De La Hoya probably have a similar thing going on that what's his name? They had a similar thing going on that, why can I not think of his name? Who am I thinking of? One second, let me get back to you. Who am I thinking of? Teofimo. I was thinking of Teofimo. He has a similar thing that Teofimo had going on with his dad. It was a similar dodgy, weird situation. The anti-Wilder stuff went into overdrive when AJ lost to Andy Ruiz. It was overcompensation for AJ's failure. Well, I think Wilder's a lot worse than AJ personally. None of us are perfect, Nordic. We're all sinners at the end of the day. Not a Christian in faith, but try to be one in spirit, if that makes sense. Some of the most Christian people aren't religious. Well, I mean, that's the thing. You might call yourself not religious, but you understand the concepts of the Bible. You understand the Ten Commandments, and at least on some level, you understand repentance. Like you're saying, none of us are perfect. That's true. we're all fallen. We're all sinners. That's how we are. You know, we're born into this fallen world, and we are naturally inclined to sin, which is why we need to rely on the Savior, who is Jesus Christ. You know, trust, as the evangelists say, you know, trust in Jesus as you trust a parachute, and you shall be saved. You know, here's what it is, man. It's not as complicated as people make it out to be. You know. Who you got if the fight was made, AJ or Wilder? I got AJ by knockout, but I give Wilder a puncher's chance. Crying because you had a dream. They made all Iron Brew no sugar. See, if that did happen, I'd probably cry for days, man. I really would. I'd have a funeral for the original Iron Brew flavor, man. Oh, they better not do that, man. See if they ever do that. I'll be like. You ever seen that episode of South Park where Cartman becomes like a drug smuggler, and it's because they banned KFC, and Cartman basically becomes like a cartel boss, like smuggling the KFC as contraband into the country. That'd be me with like the original Iron Brew. I'd be smuggling it in as contraband. Oh man, could you imagine if they did that? The UK needs to stop inviting those Mexicans over that fuck up their fighters, man. Yeah, they do. You know, they need to stop bringing over the Martinezes and the Lauras. You know, they need to stop bringing those guys over to expose our guys, man. You know, they need to get them some more Argentinian and Guatemalan journeymen who they can look easy with. The only boxer who can get off with crying is Chocolatito. Yeah, well, I'm actually kind of embarrassed by what it was that made me cry. Wilder was 27-0 when he fought Audley, who was coming off of solid domestic level wins. Wilder drilled him in 60 seconds. Kelvin Price was also better than Audley. Smooth Critical One is I think he's a secret Deontay Wilder fan. I think he is. I think this guy's like one of the Wilder guys in disguise, man. UK establishment needs to get behind Reece Edwards. The guy is great. No Welsh bias, I promise. Yeah, he's all right, isn't he? I'll get behind him, no problem. I was so happy when Wales beat Ukraine. Yeah, it's good to see the underdogs win, isn't it, man? I don't know much about football though, so I'm not going to embarrass myself, man. Bradley called Haney's holding beautiful boxing. Yeah, I mean, Bradley would know, wouldn't he? You know, his headbutts were beautiful. You know, him getting gift decision against Pacquiao, that was beautiful boxing, you know. Wilder ducked Warshik. Yeah, Warshik wasn't fat enough for Wilder, you know, so they needed to give him a drug test. Povetkin should have derailed the Wilder hype train if the latter didn't duck. Yeah, that was a shame, man. Deontay Wilder's hype would have been over in that fight, because could you imagine him going over to Russia and beating Povetkin? Nah, Wilder would have fell apart that night, and Povetkin would have knocked him out. And that's why they never went through with the fight, man. I'll be corrected on the record. Come on, Kelvin Price versus Harrison is a close run thing. You could argue in favour of either. They were two of his best wins, and that speaks volumes. Either way, they were all bums, and they were probably fixed fights anyway. Fedor Emelianenko is a Christian from Russia, and he's the greatest fighter of all time. Manny Pacquiao is a known Christian. He's the greatest boxer of all time. With God, all things are possible. Yeah, a lot of fighters are Christians, actually. So somebody asked me earlier in the stream who's my favourite Scottish fighter, and I said it was Scott Harrison. He's a devout Christian these days. You know, he had problems back in the day, but go and follow his Twitter, and you'll see what I mean. He's a very, very staunch Christian. You know, same with who else was it? You know, Tyson Fury's obviously he's a bit of a degenerate, but he definitely believes in God. You know, he's definitely a Christian. And there's a lot of fighters who, for whatever reason, a lot of these fighters tend to have a lot more of a. It's hard to explain, but they have more of a connection to God than a lot of other people do for some reason. Maybe it's because they face their mortality a lot more than the rest of us do, and you find that a lot of fighters are very spiritual. You know, a lot of them really do genuinely believe in God. I mean. That's why you hear them after fights. They say, "I want to thank God," before they say anything else, because when they come out of that fight still alive, you know, they they feel as if they owe everything to God. You know, I know it sounds as if I'm rambling, but there's a point here. You know, may God bless you, Nordic. The end times must be on the way. It just can't get more degenerate. I know, man. But again, it's all prophesized in the Bible. You know, these are the end times, and you know, we just gotta pray for the best and prepare for the worst. You know, that guy made Shakira Stevenson cry like a little girl is fighting tonight as well. Is he now? Is he fighting? Interesting. I don't like to lose. They won't do it. Stop searching bulk iron brew searching bulk iron brew stock. Yeah, I want to get like crates of it in my house, man. George Foreman fought a lot of bums before he destroyed Fraser, and had a lot more boxing experience. Oh, come on, man! I get it. You're right. He did. That's absolutely true. But there will be no praising Deontay Wilder on my channel. I'm sorry, man. This is a dictatorship, not a democracy, and praising Deontay Wilder is not allowed on this channel. People think there are only 10 commandments in the Bible. There are actually 600. Yeah, there's 10 that we know of, you know, but there's obviously a lot more. There's a lot of regulations and parameters in the Bible that most people don't even know of, you know. Not to take the convo away from boxing, but what's your opinion on the latest gen of gaming consoles? I know you didn't care for the PS4 and Xbox One gen. I still haven't bought a new generation console, and to be honest with you, mate, I don't really plan on doing so. You know, I kind of stick with consoles from my own generation, and you know, I prefer, like, to me the peak years of gaming are the late 90s to the early 2010s. And I think it kind of dropped off after that, and it just became all corporate. It became all about online and all about microtransactions and all about propaganda, and it isn't the same anymore, you know. So I don't promote or support modern day gaming. I just don't. I'm not interested in it. I prefer retro gaming, you know. That's my thing. If you follow my other channel, you'll see I'm all about retro gaming. That's my thing, you know. The greatest fighters of our era, Chocolatito and Usyk, are very devout Christians. Yeah, exactly. A lot of fighters are devout Christians. And, you know, they all maintain that they owe everything they have to God. Rebesa Ramirez kept Shakira from winning an Olympic gold medal, yeah. Yeah, he fought on the... I'm pretty sure he fought on the Taylor Catterall card, Rebesa Ramirez, and he looked pretty good. He had a good knockout. I see now that sportsmen are getting grief for not wearing gay pride ribbons. Seems tolerance is no longer enough, and a round of applause has become compulsory. Yeah, well, you see, the thing with that is that's a very, very dangerous can of worms to open, because what's going to happen there is that the establishment is basically proving that they don't respect somebody's right. You know, if it's your religious beliefs that you don't support this gay pride situation, then you should have every right to not wear that ribbon. I mean, you're not doing anybody any harm. You're not speaking out against it. You're just not participating. So if they're telling people that they have to participate and they have no choice, then that is a very, very dangerous can of worms to open. That's what I will say, man. That's some real dictatorship stuff. Really is, man. Jared Anderson is the best American heavyweight prospect, moves like a cruiserweight and is in his early 20s. Yeah, Jared Anderson is looking really good so far, and I really look forward to see what he can do, because he looks pretty good so far, man. He really does. I'm excited about it. Wilder is a delusional moron and has an idiotic, barely human fan base. Yep, that's you're on the right track here, Smooth Critical. I approve of that. Let's read the next part. But he's got good attributes as a fighter. You're treading on thin ice here, my friend. You're treading on thin ice. Back in 2016, you made an excellent video detailing when Povetkin had little chance against Wilder, who went on to get better wins than he had back then. Yep, but, you know, let's stop living in the past. I said a lot of stupid shit in 2016 that makes me cringe when I listen to it back. But yeah, no, you're right. I did think Wilder was going to beat Povetkin, because I actually rated Wilder more then than I ended up rating him. And not only that, but I thought Povetkin was pretty shot back then. But Povetkin obviously proved me wrong. He had some pretty good wins, and he actually was still on good form back then. And in retrospect, I think Wilder would have knocked him out personally. I mean, I think Povetkin would have knocked him out personally, because Wilder, going over to Russia, he wouldn't have been able to handle it, and he can't fight inside, and Povetkin would have just taken him apart, in my opinion. I'm going to get ready for a workout. I'd like to ask how close you are to doing a video on Rocky Marciano and how much you've learned about him. Thanks for the chat and have a good weekend later. Yeah, man, I definitely will do that at some point. I don't know when, but definitely at some point it's going to be done. Thanks, man, and yeah, enjoy your workout, man. God bless. Good to see you here, as always. Good man. Haney is a man of God as well. He was shouting Allah Akbar after beating Camposo. Oh, man. Fury said publicly he's coming out of retirement to fight the winner of AJ Usyk. Shortest retirement ever, man. I think everybody knew that. He said he's retired so he wouldn't have to fight a mandatory till he can go for undisputed, yeah. I mean, who knows? Tyson Fury says one thing and he does the opposite, so... I mean, he does, take everything he says with a pinch of salt, man. My guy's scalping Iron Brew for eBay after market prices in 2029 post-sugar boycott. Yeah, that'll be me in the future, man, trying to smuggle it in. I'll probably, find the recipe and try and make it myself, What's your status on the safety of your Glock? Hey, there ain't no safety on my Glock, man. Fury should get stripped if he's retired. Yeah, of course he should, but he hasn't been stripped yet, as far as I know. Gaming is whack now. Yeah, of course it is. Like I said, modern day gaming, it sucks. I'm not interested in it. I prefer retro gaming. That's my thing, man. We are definitely in the end days. I believe 2 Timothy literally describes the times we are living in. Yeah. If you look at the Revelations in the Bible, it definitely predicted a lot of the stuff we see today, didn't it, man? Really did. Usyk is a fake Christian. He has literally been lying to the entire world about fighting in a war. Yeah, that really put me off. That when he was going over there and taking those Hunger Games style propaganda photos in his combat fatigues, that really put me off, man. Him and Lomachenko, they've got a lot to answer for, man. They really do. I did not like it one bit. Did not like it. When you bring enough money into the sport, they let you do things like that. Yeah, of course they do. Haney can say he'd never lose to a white boy, and no one even remembers it, do they? No one except me. Oh, man. Holyfield wanted to implement Jesus into every answer in post-fight interview. Yeah, I want to thank God. Just want to thank God. I owe it all to God. I just want to thank God. That was every Holyfield interview, wasn't it, man? Yeah, he definitely implemented Jesus into it. Povetkin was a small heavyweight who could only fight one way, had the fighting temperament of Joseph Parker, very skilled but very flawed, best win Takam in a war. Still better than Wilder, by far. Wilder has no skill, but he could still beat AJ, says a lot, yeah. Yeah, I mean, AJ has better boxing skills, more fundamentals, but he's definitely got the weaker chin of the two, and Wilder would have a puncher's chance, but again, I'm curious as to whether Wilder has ever been in a real fight, so who knows, man. I still think AJ would win. Wilder's chin is really good. That's a good attribute. Also, warrior mentality. Can't box, though, agreed. Yeah, he sucks. What fight is your profile picture? That is actually from Anthony Crawler versus Jorge Linares 2. It was a fight that my friend took. It was a picture my friend took of when we were standing where we were going to be sitting, looking at the ring. And my friend took a picture, and yeah, I decided to use it as my profile picture. I've had it ever since, man. I think it's quite a nice looking profile picture. It kind of, because again, it's boxing related, and people, as soon as people see it, they know it's me, Unless it's someone pretending to be me, But usually it's me. Consider his age, being badly beaten up before he smashed White's weak chin with one punch. Bob has said that Beterbiev versus Yard is basically set if he beats Smith tonight. So that is reassuring to me as a sign they'll probably not tried to screw with Beterbiev. Yeah, I don't see there being any corruption in that fight. I mean, like I was saying earlier in the stream, or did I say it earlier in the stream? I can't remember. I might have said it yesterday when I was talking to someone else, but I was saying basically that, yeah, they screwed over Maxim Vlasov, but Vlasov wasn't that well known, didn't have a title, didn't have a big fan base, whereas Beterbiev is a guy who's relatively well known. He's the lineal champion, he's unified champion. There's a lot of big fights that can be made with him, so I think him being who he is and having the fan base that he has, I don't think they'll screw him over. I think that'll be a fair fight. I really do. But I've been wrong before, and I might be wrong again, but I think it's a fair fight, man. That's how I see it. Lomachenko is the bigger prick, though. He'll be ducked by Devin Ganey when he might have been able to fight Kambosos, but he had to virtue signal. Yeah, Lomachenko could have gone over and knocked out Kambosos, but instead, he wanted to go over there and put on his army fatigues with his Rolex and pretend he was going to war, Very disappointing, man. Fury knows that he's hurtling backwards and the years of plenty have caught up with him. He's been cherry-picking fights for a while and knows Usyk would be a bridge too far for him. I'll tell you one thing, Fury's never seemed keen on fighting Usyk. I'm not saying he won't fight him, but he's never seemed too keen on that fight, has he? Yeah, I think Wilder beats AJ as well. AJ is more technically skilled, but Wilder has a slightly better chin. Wilder would win a sloppy KO, I think. Crawler developed power out of nowhere too. Eddie Hearn strikes again. Yeah, that Barroso knockout, Crawler had never shown that kind of power before. All of a sudden in that fight, he showed bloody amazing power, man. He did. He just broke him down quite easily. Exposed didn't he demand $500 million for fighting? He's just talking shit. He's not going to get $500 million. Maybe he'd cash out for stupid money, but only for that reason. Fury will be back. Fury will never retire. Look, he's the kind of fighter. He'll never retire. Okay, until he's dead in a ditch somewhere. He's that type of person. Right? He'll get bored and he'll want attention, and eventually he'll have another fake mental breakdown and he'll be back in the ring. And you know the story with Tyson Fury, man. The guy's a toxic individual. He's got severe issues where he's a narcissist. He needs the attention, and he just can't leave boxing alone. He'll never retire. When he says he's retired, what he means is he just doesn't want to fight somebody. He doesn't want to fight a mandatory, or doesn't want to handle the pressure of being champion. He'll be back, all right, and he'll probably fight AJ or Usyk. He'll probably be back, okay? He's just that type of person. He can't leave the sport alone. He needs the attention, man. Just wait and see. I'd love to see Devin Haney lose to a white boy, Hopkins Kawasaki style. Yeah, would have happened if he fought Loma, but who knows? Loma took a dive, an obvious dive against Teofimo. So who's to say he wouldn't take an obvious dive against Haney, who seems to have more push than Teofimo? He is not serious with that number. He is looking for a big payday, but not literally $500 million. Yeah, it'll be. We want everything. You get nothing. We want something. There you go. It's just a negotiation. Yeah, that's how it is. Fury will fight Usyk if he wins. The man is motivated by money, not legacy. Yeah, not just money. It's just, again, Fury's obviously in the establishment. He'll do whatever they tell him. Okay, he's an establishment fighter, and there's a few agendas that need to be pushed with him. So he'll be around for as long as they say. Who would you pick if Beterbiev fought Bivol? Right now, I'd pick Beterbiev. If he looks poor against Smith, I'd probably favour Bivol. Unless obscene money is on the table, he won't fight Usyk. Maybe he'd fight another cherry-picked guy or AJ if he thinks he's finished. Well, the AJ fight has more money in it than the Usyk fight, so that would be one that would be, and it's more winnable too, stylistically. So that's probably one that would be probably one that he would go for. It'd probably be one that would appeal to him more financially. Did you see Josh Kelly's fight last night? Funnily enough, he was one of my favourite fighters when I was getting into boxing. I knew nothing back then. Yeah, I didn't watch it, but I was talking about it with Mark, and I think that it was it Peter Kramer he fought, wasn't it? The Hungarian. That guy's kind of a tough journeyman, but look, I've always said about Josh Kelly, I think he's very limited because he doesn't have the boxing fundamentals, and he makes too many silly mistakes. And Adam Booth is his trainer, so that can't be a great sign. I don't see him going anywhere, man. He'll just be a domestic level fighter. Can't see him being world champion unless he gets a Trevor Bryan-like opponent, I hope Beterbiev doesn't let that old man dictate his career. Well, they'll probably age him out and feed him to somebody like a Canelo or a Ramirez or someone. I'd like to see Callum Smith fight Bivol. Good fight. It's a good fight, but I think Bivol would probably school Smith. But I give Smith a puncher's chance. It's a good fight, though. I'm sick of this blue-collar Smith talk. I want Beterbiev to send this guy back full-time construction without a hard hat. Yeah, this guy's wanting, brutality, man. Beterbiev hasn't fought enough and is getting old, mid to late 30s now. Yeah, I think he's 36, 37, something like that. Tom Rank has done him dirty in that respect. Well, at least they've gotten him a big fight here, a unification, and he's already a unified champion. So he's had a good run, but he hasn't been as active as some of us would have liked to have seen. He hasn't had the big money, big legacy fights. If Beterbiev does a job on Smith, the demand for the Bivol fight will be very high. Well, yeah, definitely. Two Russians in the light heavyweight division, both undefeated, both decent punchers. They'll be, that'll be interesting. It'll be a big fight. They could have that fight. I don't know where they'd have it. Maybe Canada, or obviously just somewhere in the States. It wouldn't be in Russia because of what's been going on, but it'd still be a big fight, man. It really would. They can announce them both as being from the States. Oh man. Fury seems to have an inherited personality, or inherited certain personality traits from his dad, who, let's be honest, is a piece of human trash. Tried to take a lad's eye out over a pint of beer. Yeah, John Fury's a scumbag. I'd lay that guy out. I'm not even kidding. Even little Carl Frampton wasn't intimidated by him, man. The guy's a clown. He had a glass chin. He was a shit fighter. And he was a joke. And he's living vicariously through his son, just like Teofimo Lopez Sr. is. But I mean, look, I think Fury had a lot of mob connections on his way up. We know that, and I think that he was kind of forced into boxing, and he definitely has a lot of the bully mentality that his dad had. If Fury beats Usyk, you'll shift the narrative from the bad lifestyle has caught up to Fury. He's ducking Usyk to Usyk was finished. The AJ fights took it out of him. Well, it depends on the manner of the victory, doesn't it? Like Fury, most of Fury's victories are due to him cheating his way to victory. So if he has to cheat to beat Usyk, then we're gonna remain consistent. You're not gonna get any pretense from me anyway. But if he wins that fight legitimately in a real fight and an actual fight that's fought within the rules, then that he deserves a lot of credit for that, because Usyk, despite being half his size, is a very, very skilled fighter and a much better athlete than anybody Fury's fought. So if he wins that fight and wins it well, then he'll get a lot of credit from me, because that's a good fight, man. Usyk's a really hard. I think he would beat him, by the way, but it'd be hard. I think Fury would have to cheat a bit to win, but if he wins that fight legitimately in an actual boxing match without any fouling, then he gets a lot of credit from me. With AJ having this new deal on DAZN, do you think they'll rob Usyk? I was talking about this earlier, and I think that there's definitely something to that, because obviously DAZN are going to want a return on the AJ investment, but I don't know, man. There's a lot of weird things going on in the world politically, and Usyk is, right now, he's a protected class, isn't he? So we'll see, man. It's a dangerous fight for Beterbiev, but Beterbiev is a class above. Yeah, that's how I see it. Beterbiev's the better fighter, but it's a dangerous fight because he's fighting a puncher, and he's been down before, so that makes it interesting, man. Callum Smith has serious power, though, and Bivol's just an average boxer. Interesting, yeah. I've never really rated Callum Smith as a boxer, but he's definitely a big guy with long arms and good power. Fury's from a family of scum, but so are most prominent boxers. It's irrelevant to their abilities. Okay. If Fury beats Usyk, then he deserves credit for an excellent win. Undeserved credit, I very much doubt it'll ever happen, though. Well, I don't know if, now that I think about it, does he deserve credit? Because according to him, Usyk's a cruiserweight, and he's a shithouse bum dosser. So, I mean, beating a shithouse bum dosser cruiserweight, I mean, that's not really that impressive, is it? He should knock him out in the first round. So, let's hold Tyson Fury to his own standard. I mean, he said that Wilder was a bum. He said that Wilder was a glass-chinned, swinging bum dosser joke of a fighter, and he didn't rate him. So should I be giving him credit for beating him and actually getting dropped by him? No, I don't think so. I think if he'd have knocked him out in 30 seconds, then I would have gave him credit. But let's just hold Fury to his own standard, and let's only give him credit if he actually lives up to his words. Salute illegal hugger Haney, big fan, man. Good job against Kambosos. Does John Fury cuddle with Tyson like T.O. Senior? Wouldn't surprise me, man. It wouldn't surprise me at all. I wouldn't call Enzo Calzaghe or Len Woodall scum. A lot of boxers and their family are decent people. You're repeating an urban legend. Yeah, I don't know, man. Yeah, it just depends. Everybody's different, and some people are from good backgrounds, some people are not. But the Furies are definitely a right dodgy family, man. I mean, Peter Fury was a drug dealer, an absolute dirtbag. And John Fury, we know the guy's just a scumbag thug, isn't he? So, yeah, they're a dodgy family, man. They really are. Charlie Edwards could hurt John Fury. Charlie Edwards would knock John Fury out. You'd need to give him a step ladder, though, but he could probably do it. If he landed one on his chin, he could probably knock him out. You said Fury has to cheat his way to victory. Who's it? Oh, come on, man. Tyson Fury cheats in every fight, leans on his opponent's back, hits them behind the head, hits them on the break, pushes them, uses his size, absolutely abuses his size. He's one of the dirtiest fighters I've ever seen. But the problem is, and the thing that's always confused me, is that Fury's one of these fighters, just like Bernard Hopkins, just like Andre Ward. He's one of these fighters who, his entire career, he's gotten away with it. Like referees seem to be very, very lenient, almost docile when it comes to Tyson Fury. It's ridiculous, man, the stuff he gets away with in the ring. And the fact that boxing fans ignore it too is quite shocking. Because, I mean, to me, that type of thing sticks out. When I see fighters fouling, I'm one of the first ones to notice it, I rate Callum Smith. I don't rate Liam Smith, though. He's very average. I think Liam Smith's he's a good pressure fighter, a good body puncher, but he's technically very limited. Callum Smith's obviously a big guy, good power, good long reach, turns his punches over good, but his defense is awful, man. Go and watch his fight against John Ryder or his fight against Eric Skoglund. He got pieced up all night in those fights. His defense and his overall boxing IQ just aren't that impressive to me, So I don't think either of them's world class, but they're good domestic level fighters, I said unreserved, not undeserved. One letter makes a difference. Yeah, sorry, man, my bad. Usyk lost to Briedis and got a gift decision. No. Usyk clearly won that fight, man. In Briedis' backyard, too. If you held Fury to that standard, he'd get no credit for beating anyone. Yeah, I mean, put it this way, right? You look at a guy like Josh Taylor, right, or a guy like Crawford, right? One of the criticisms that a lot of us have of those guys is that they're big for the division, right? They're bigger than most of their opponents, and a lot of people say, well, they can't be considered pound for pound fighters because they're big, right? Well, let's look at Tyson Fury, right? Has Tyson Fury ever fought anybody who's even remotely close to his own size? Like the guy's been and that's not his fault. He's a big guy. He's very, very big. Unless he fought Nikolai Valuev
or Ustinov or one of those guys, or Marius Wack, unless he fought someone like that, he's very rarely ever going to fight somebody his own size, is he? But the fact of the matter is, if we're holding him to the same standard that we hold those guys, I don't ever want to see him on anybody's pound-for-pound list, and I don't ever want to hear anybody call him a great fighter, because, again, if being great means you have to fight guys bigger than you or your own size, then let's hold everybody to that standard and not just some of them, I say the same thing about Lawrence Okolie, right? Let's hold everybody to that same standard. I mean, one of the criticisms that the Klitschko's got for years when they were champions was, oh, they're bigger than everybody. They're bigger and heavier than everybody they fought, which wasn't always true, was in most cases. But the idea of, that they shouldn't get any credit because they were bigger, well, let's hold everyone to that standard, is all I'm saying. That's another emotional response. Some are decent, but it's the Mayweathers, Tysons, Alis, and Listons who have characterized the sport. Fury is under FBI investigations in the US. I don't care about that. The Kinahan situation, who cares? But he's definitely, Fury's got like mob connections, and he has done for years, man. Charlie Z would knock John Fury. yeah, probably would, man. Charlie Z is the only man to go 326-0. He took a dive against Wilder, so it doesn't count. Yeah, the only man to actually beat him was Andrew Kid Thunder Hartley, man. That guy's a legend. I used to talk to that guy on Facebook, man. I wonder how he's doing these days. He's a nice guy. Canelo has no chance against Beterbiev. Well, only if it's a fixed fight, he would have a chance in that fight. Usyk's all wrong for Fury. Fury said Cunningham was his most difficult fight because of his stature, speed, and mobility. Couldn't outbox him. We also saw with Wallin how he does versus a southpaw. Yeah, that's true. He struggled badly in that fight, man. In both of those fights. He cheated against Steve Cunningham. Yeah, Fury's performance against Cunningham really should have gotten him disqualified. But again, that's the point I keep making about Fury. The narrative is he's this guy who takes on the establishment. He's the the black sheep, and not in. He's never had anybody. He's never had a helping hand his whole career. Well, even when he fights on the road, somehow the referees turn a blind eye to everything he does. He was able to cheat his way to victory against Cunningham. He cheated all the way through the first Deontay Wilder fight, and clearly, if you know what you're looking at, clearly the referee was on his side in that fight and gave him a lot of time to recover, more time than they would have given anybody else. I mean, if any B-side fighter got knocked on the canvas for as long as Fury did, do you think any referee is gonna give him the opportunity? Is any referee gonna give him the full 10 count and then say, walk over here? Are you fully recovered? Are you ready to continue? Are you ready to go in there and make it the distance? Like, you're never going to see that, are you, from a B-side? So, again, there's a lot of things that Tyson Fury's fans are in denial about, as far as I'm concerned. The guy's definitely got powers that be watching out for him, And, I mean, let's not pretend that his mob connections have nothing to do with his success in boxing, I've met a lot of fighters who are, and most are decent people who respect others. The trailer trash made good tends to be the exceptions. The bad people in boxing tend to be managers, promoters. Yeah, I see what you mean there. I know a lot of fighters who are good people. Joe Gallagher's God effing sucks. Speaking of Smith versus Ryder, that was a stupid decision. He refused Saunders in a unification fight to fight mandatory Ryder for less money and less publicity, and got his arse kicked, but got a hometown decision. Funny how there was no outrage about that. When Josh Taylor won a decision, there was, everybody started spitting their dummy out and throwing their toys out the pram. But when Callum Smith got that hometown decision, that was clearly a win for John Ryder, but they gave it to Callum Smith because he was at home and he was the A side. Clearly, weird how there was no outrage about that, was there? Strange. It's weird, isn't it? AJ's done far worse against southpaws since the amateurs, yet he was fairly competitive. And Wallin, who Fury grossly underestimated, was 6'5", Not 6-3-2-2. Yeah, okay. Where was I? I'm behind. Where was I? Klitschko 1 inch shorter than Fury, weighed the exact same at the weigh-ins. That's not true. Klitschko was, I think, 3 inches shorter, and I'm pretty sure Fury weighed at least 5 pounds, maybe more, like more heavier. But again, there's a lot more. There's a lot more to it than that, isn't there? Heavyweights are usually never pound for pound anyway. I don't even know what the concept of pound for pound is. It means different things to other people, you know. It means different things to each person individually, you know. Vlad was outweighed in 50% of his bouts, but gets no credit. Compare that to, yeah, of course. You know, the likes of Ray Austin, Marius Wack, Tony Thompson, they were pretty big guys, but again, they were just written off as complete bums after they lost to Vlad, you know. Wallin and Usyk has the same reach. And did you read my comment? Fury said his most difficult fight was against a cruiser in Cunningham because of his mobility and speed. Usyk's size isn't a problem. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's not a problem. Look, a guy Fury's size is always going to be big. Like again, you fight a guy like Nikolai Valuev. He's not the best fighter, but he's always going to be big. You know, it's always going to be an issue. But it might not be as big an issue when you're a guy like Usyk, who's so skilled and athletic. You know. Canelo can beat a 39-year-old Beterbiev, yeah, by a gift decision or a dive. Plus, I don't remember AJ fighting another southpaw aside from Charles Martin. Yeah, not as a pro. AJ's first pro opponent, who was a southpaw, was Charles Martin, and I think his second was Usyk, who got schooled. You know, who he got schooled by. I mean. Wilder was outweighed half the time by fat guys. I mean, come on, man. 20+ time. Dustin Nichols. Dustin Nichols probably outweighed Wilder. So did probably Chris Arreola. In 84% of his fights, being outweighed is not necessarily a disadvantage if your opponent is far less athletic. Well, again, like I said earlier, there's more nuance to it than that. You know, there's a lot more to it than that. I mentioned Vincenzo Nardiello earlier. Random fact: well-known wrecking machine Sven Ottke actually knocked his brother Giovanni Spark out. Turns out Ottke had power when he felt for it. Yeah, that's true. That was Ottke's first title defense against Giovanni Nardiello, and that's right. He was Vincenzo Nardiello's brother, who was Vincenzo Nardiello was one of these like classic spoiler types who was in like some terrible title fights, but his brother wasn't quite as good as he was. Interestingly about that fight, that guy Giovanni Nardiello, who got knocked out by Ottke, he got hospitalized after that fight, and apparently he was in hospital for several days, and apparently was in critical condition, and he actually got taken out of the ring on a stretcher. And it's weird because he got caught with a punch that landed on his temple, and you see when he actually got back up after the count. But then later on, like a few minutes later, he collapsed and was taken out on a stretcher. And he was sent to hospital for apparently several days after that fight. That was an interesting one, that. But because Sven Ottke had no power, you know, because he couldn't punch, because he was feather-fisted. But he literally put a guy in critical condition, you know. And it wasn't the only guy either. There was a few of Ottke's opponents like that, you know. That guy, Artur, interestingly, another guy's brother, Artur Gatti's brother, who fought Sven Ottke, he ended up in critical condition. He ended up with a brain bleed after he fought Sven Ottke, and his career was over. Never fought again. He had to retire because of that fight. But Sven Ottke had no power, though. He couldn't punch, you know. It's what it is, man. Can't have everything, can you? Chisora ragdoll, here we go. He struggled with Chisora. He wouldn't be able to ragdoll a bigger Wallin. Cunningham was 11 pounds lighter than Usyk. Usyk had a much longer reach. Fury underestimated him. This was 2013. So yeah, Usyk got thrown around by Chisora. Well, let's make the fight then. Look, I'm tired of arguing about this. Make the fight. Let's make Usyk versus Fury. Let's stop with the $500 million. Again, prove me wrong. Usyk, according to Fury, Usyk is a bum dosser. He's a shit house. He's a cruiserweight. He's got no skill. He struggled with Chisora. He's shit. He's a bum, right? Let's see the fight. And then I expect Tyson Fury to knock Usyk out in 30 seconds. If the fight goes past 30 seconds, I'm not giving Fury any credit. Then he's a hype job. Right? Let's be consistent, people. According to Fury, Usyk is a bum and a dosser, and he can't take a punch, and he's too small. Therefore, Fury should finish him in 30 seconds, right? If Fury's the heavyweight champion and the Gypsy King and the greatest of all time, let's see the fight. Right? If Fury does that, if he knocks Usyk out in 30 seconds, I'll give him all the credit in the world. If the fight goes 4 rounds, I will laugh and take the piss out of Fury and call him the biggest hype job ever. Okay? Please make that fight. John Ryder getting robbed is standard at this point. Yeah, John Ryder, like, that guy can't get a break, man. Like, every time he got, like, a big opportunity in his career, he never got the decision, man. Except for against Jacobs. But, again, people calling that fight a robbery. I don't know what they were looking at. I thought he clearly beat Jacobs, man. I honestly didn't even think it was that close. Jacobs did nothing after the first half of that fight, and I thought John Ryder clearly won it, man. That's how I saw it. Chisora did nothing to Usyk. Usyk outboxed him comfortably. Yeah, I think Chisora won 2 rounds against Usyk, and Usyk completely took over. Yeah, I'm watching that fight again. It wasn't as close as I remember it being. It was a pretty comfortable win for Usyk, in my opinion. John Ryder drew against Billy Joe Saunders, making his only real loss the Blackwell KO when he was dominating. It's interesting how Blackwell was one of the only guys to like legitimately beat John Ryder, because I wouldn't really put Blackwell on the same level as Saunders or Smith. So it's weird that he was able to be the one to stop John Ryder. It's a weird one, but obviously John Ryder either underestimated him or he's improved a lot since that fight, man. Wallin fought short. Yeah, that's true. He fought short and he got inside and he gave Fury a lot of problems, man. He really did. It was a really, really hard fight, and he was a southpaw, so it makes the Usyk fight a lot more interesting, doesn't it, man? It really does. If you want to make the excuse that Fury underestimated Cunningham, I can say the same for Usyk versus Chisora, right? It doesn't matter. Look, at the end of the day, let's see the fight. We're never going to know unless we see it. Again, like I said, if Fury is as great as this guy thinks he is, and if Fury's as great as he says he is, and if Usyk is as shit as they're saying he is, let's see the fight. And I expect Fury to win inside of 30 seconds. Let's see it. Please, let's make the fight happen so we can see it. Klitschko was clearly out of sorts and had something troubling him against Tyson Fury. Then lacked the motivation, and the ring rust got the better of him when he had AJ beaten. Yeah, I suppose so. But at the end of the day, careers don't last forever. Okay, Vlad was obviously a great champion in his day, and he was on top for many years. And it gets to the point when how much longer can this go on for? You know, he'd reached that age. He'd obviously passed his peak. He'd had his he'd had everything he wanted to achieve. He achieved everything he wanted to achieve in boxing. And at the end of the day, he was 40 years old, had a long ass career, a very hard, well accomplished career. Made a lot of money. What motivation was there for Vladimir to keep fighting and keep performing at his best? Fury got him at the right time, and AJ finished him off. It is what it is, man. And like I said, you know, like I've said many times in the past, Fury bottled it from the rematch, and we never got to see whether or not it was a fluke. So, yeah, we'll never know what would have happened in that rematch. And as for Anthony Joshua, look, Anthony Joshua, like I said, you know, Klitschko was on the verge of retirement. He was at the end of his career. He was pretty shot. And we all know that a prime Klitschko, if all you got to do is look at that fight and how it was going, we know a prime Klitschko absolutely embarrasses Anthony Joshua. Let's be honest, he does. That fight wouldn't have even been remotely competitive. Let's be honest about it. But again, look, I know Vladimir was 40 years old. What 40-year-old is ever on top? Who's ever at their prime at 40 years old? Like, you don't see that in boxing, okay? But people like to conveniently ignore that and act as if just everything that Vlad did prior to those fights is meaningless, and it's all about what happened with Fury and AJ. Because a lot of boxing fans are, a lot of boxing fans are just reactionary and inconsistent, and they don't really see the bigger picture, you know? All right, where was I? There are weight classes for a reason, and it matters. And if athleticism mattered, then you admit Vlad was much better than everyone else. So credit to him. Yeah, of course. In his day, he was better than everyone else. Like during his era, he was the best. But by the end of his era, he lost to much bigger men and two guys who were much bigger and much younger and were at their prime and much hungrier than he was. It is what it is. Watch for those temple shots and right hands to the body on Joe Smith by Artur tonight. Yeah, Beterbiev's quite dirty and quite grimy on the inside, man. He's dangerous. He really is, man. You say Cunningham did so well because he was smaller, but Wallin is not the same because he was bigger. Usyk just as mobile as Cunningham and same reach. Southpaw like Wallin, what's the point? Yeah, like I said, look, we need to see the fight, man. And Fury, to me, has never seemed keen on that fight. He's always seemed as if he's got some excuse for not being interested in it, When you're mentioning guys leaving the ring on a stretcher, have you ever seen the Terry Norris knockout after the bell versus Luis Santana? Would be funny to watch if it weren't. Would be funny if it weren't so nasty to watch. I don't think I've actually seen that. I might look it up though. The zone commentary influenced people in Ryder versus... Yeah, definitely it did. They were acting like it was close. It wasn't. Ryder clearly won that fight. Clearly. British boxers are all hype jobs, mate. Well, I got nothing to say about that, man. I'm not getting into that. Fulton Roman was a much higher level fight than Haney Kambosos. Charlie Z said that Fury's not a boxer. Well, if Charlie Z said it, then it must be true. Where was I? Vlad was 40 and postponed for injuries. Fury still avoided a rematch. Of course he did, but again, we'll never know what would have happened because it never happened, And that's Fury's fault. It never happened. He bottled the rematch. A lot of people make excuses for Vlad when he lost to Fury. He didn't lack motivation. He was active and coming off a clear win against Jennings. He didn't lack motivation. Well, no, actually, you see, if you watch that Jennings fight, wasn't a good look. That was a very, very poor performance from Vlad, and he actually really showed his age in that fight. And Brian Jennings was a guy who'd only been boxing for about 7 years and didn't have much of an amateur background. But he gave Vlad, I know he lost wide, but he gave him problems, and Vlad's timing and his stamina just looked off in that fight. I remember watching it at the time, and I said after that fight that Vlad should probably consider retirement because he clearly started to show his age. Because, let's be honest, a prime Vladimir would have knocked Brian Jennings out. He would have destroyed him easily, And it's funny because AJ fans like to say that Vlad was at his prime when he fought AJ, but that was 2 years after the Bryant Jennings fight. So watch that fight and tell me that he was at his prime 2 years later. Come on, man. AJ Fury, and Chisora are all British hype jobs. British aren't good at any sport. Well, AJ is Nigerian and Chisora is from Zimbabwe, so they're not British. And Fury's a gypsy, so he's not British either. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding, but not really, Vlad postponed for tactical advantage to destabilize Fury. Well, I assume you have proof of that. That's a pretty bold statement. I'm not saying you're wrong. Maybe he did, but you're gonna have to come up with some proof about that. He looked shot and unmotivated versus Jennings. He was 40. Yeah, of course. Like I said, he looked terrible in the Jennings fight. And again, no one's at their prime at 40 years old. Bernard Hopkins was still a world champ at 49, and he's a natural middle light heavyweight. Well, no, by the time Hopkins was 49, he was. Let's be honest, he was done. Wasn't that around about the time that? I'm pretty sure before then he got absolutely dominated by Kovalev, or was that the time he got dominated by Kovalev? And obviously he ended up ending his career against Smith. But again, look, that's an exception to the rule. I actually mentioned earlier on the stream that Bernard Hopkins was one of the very few guys who had a huge amount of longevity in his career, and the reason why is because he was so elusive and so dirty and so tactful, and he was just a guy who was a very, very skilled spoiler and survivor, and that was why he didn't take a lot of punishment in his career. So again, look, there's definitely exceptions, but you never see a 40-year-old dominating I mean, Hopkins might have been in his 40s having good results, but let's be honest, he wasn't setting the world alight, was he? Like, he didn't look fantastic. You know, he wasn't looking better than ever. He was basically old man in his way through those fights, you know. Had Vlad had the Thompson or Sultan performance before Fury, you would say he was shot. When Vlad was Fury's age, he was getting trashed by fringe contenders. Well, of course, fighters peak at different ages, don't they? Right, Vlad was kind of a late bloomer in the sport. In his 20s and that, he had some problems. Like, he was a little bit gun-ho. Didn't have the best. What wasn't the best at kind of managing his stamina. But in Vlad's 30s, like, I'd say when Vlad was like 31, 32, that was him at his best, around about the time he fought the likes of Hazim Rahman and guys like that, and Ruslan Chagayev. I think around about that time was when he was looking really good. And then by the time he fought like Pulev and guys like that, he was looking really sloppy. And to me, the writing was on the wall. But again, at the end of the day, you know, he'd been around a long, long time, had a lot of fights. I think like over 60 pro fights or something he'd had. So it's not as if like, you know, it's not as if all that time hadn't caught up with him. It obviously did. But that's not the point. The point is he wasn't at his prime at 40 years old. Anyone that says that's flat out deluding themselves. Okay, so we held everyone to Hopkins standard then. Everyone who isn't good until 49 is shit. Yeah, I like that, man. I do. That's a good standard to hold everybody to, you know. Fury just stole a win, landing a few more slaps than on a 40-year-old Vlad Perez. Yeah, exactly. And look, that's what happened in that fight. Fury used his height and reach. He ran around. He threw some slaps. He outworked and sort of outwitted Vladimir, and he won a decision. And it was a close fight. Could have gone either way because, you know, when Vladimir was the champion, he was the aggressor. And had he been the A side, he would have gotten the decision. Any A side would have gotten the decision in that fight. But Fury was obviously the A side because he had the referee on his side, allowing him to foul all night and allowing him to spoil. And, you know, obviously all three judges gave him the win, despite the fact they had the perfect excuse not to. So, again, Fury's been the A side his whole career. You know, he was the A side when he fought Cunningham. He was the A side when he fought Wilder, which is why the referees and judges are always on his side. So, again, look, let's just pretend, shall we, that Fury's never had any mob connections, that he doesn't have any sort of push from the establishment. Let's just pretend. Let's uphold this fantasy that he's this, you know, this anti-establishment, this guy who went in there to tear up the script and continues to do it to this day because, you know, he's fighting for God. You know, let's just stick with that narrative. You know, let's pretend he didn't get protected by referees his whole career. The only two DAZN commentators are Corey Eldman and Gabe Rosado. Or the only two decent DAZN commentators, sorry. 1 second, guys. Those pints have made me need the toilet again. Got to do a piss. Yeah, you guys have got your money's worth tonight. Getting to hear me take a piss twice. Alright, where was I? But no, Vlad was still at the pinnacle. No, he wasn't at the pinnacle. Right? That's just fanboy nonsense. That's not true at all. That's just trying to give Fury more credit than he deserves. That's all that is. But it is what it is. I get it. Trashed by fringe contenders, like who? 3 losses in 6 or 7 years. Never trust that pike. Never trust that Parky. Apple in it, Parkies. Is Triple G still at the pinnacle at 40? He's unified and beating top contenders. That's true, he is, but yeah, I agree. Triple G's definitely not at his best, but he's still getting good results, you know. You know, and then he deserves a lot of credit for it, but definitely not at his prime, you know. Definitely not. AJ fans haven't got a clue. Most of them are football fans who watch one boxing match a year. Yeah, AJ fans, a lot of them, like you say, there are a lot of the white British football fans who are just casuals and they don't know a lot about boxing. So they kind of jumped on the AJ bandwagon just because AJ had a lot of push from Sky Sports. He was always on the adverts. He was always being put in the men's health magazines, and AJ's a very obviously a big, good-looking black guy with a six-pack and muscles. He's an easy guy to promote, really. Sorry about that. 1 second. Yeah, easy guy to promote, and the boxing establishment in the UK did a great job promoting him to the casual football crowd. Sanders was a very dangerous southpaw puncher who avoided like the plague by Lennox Lewis and Tyson. Yeah, Corey Sanders was a great fighter, really underrated. Brewster, another hard puncher who was getting trashed before Vlad collapsing physically. Yeah, that was a weird fight. Vladimir absolutely dominated that fight and then just collapsed for no reason. Well, I think we know the reason, but I'm not saying it here. It is what it is. He's still an excellent, but you missed the point. No one was beating Vlad when Fury beat him. Well, someone was going to beat him. Like, if it wasn't Fury, it would have been someone else, Super heavyweights also last longer. Vlad's style was very... I don't think they do last longer. Like, name me one heavyweight who was in his prime at 40. All right, when was Lennox Lewis in his prime? When was When was Muhammad Ali in his prime? When was Mike Tyson in his prime? When was Joe Louis in his prime? Heavyweights, this idea that heavyweights age slower, I don't know where that narrative came from, and I've never agreed with it. Sanders even bothered Vitali with his power, good fighter. The sort of fighter people pretend Luis Ortiz was. Yeah, Sanders hurt Vitali. That was actually the only fight I've ever seen Vitali legitimately hurt. Like, he was way more hurt in that fight than he was when he fought Lennox Lewis. Sanders was faster and might have even been a bigger puncher than Lewis. Wasn't as professional, wasn't as consistent or skilled, but he was very powerful and very fast. And he was a tough guy who always came to fight. Look at the guys Sanders and Brewster lost to. They were fringe contenders, barely given a prayer at the time. I can make a case for Andy Ruiz too. Well, I guess Fury sucks then, because he went the distance against a guy that Sanders and Brewster were able to stop early. I mean, Fury's been exposed. He's a bum. Yes, of course, it took a guy like Fury to do it. But it doesn't mean Vlad was anywhere close to his best. Of course he wasn't. He wasn't anywhere close to his best. Fury excelled in that fight at making Vlad look bad, rather than doing anything effective himself. So much for the rough-scoring Germany. Yeah, Germany was never a place where you had bad scoring, ever. In fact, if anything, travelling fighters were often treated very, very fairly in Germany, And look, it's not always about where the fight is. You had international officials appointed by the sanctioning bodies. Obviously, they favoured Tyson Fury. Right? He was obviously the political. If he wasn't like the financial A side, he was the political A side in that fight, which is why Tony Weeks protected him. He was the referee, and the judges were obviously on his side because they gave him the win when they didn't have to. Vitali had a comparatively terrible record. Chisora might well be his best win. I don't think Chisora is his best win. He had better wins than that. If Vlad felt like he was in decline, he should have retired rather than sign a 5-fight deal that lasted to 41. I could say Fury was pre-prime, very young and green, world title debut. I don't think Fury's ever been physically. He might not have been at his prime technically, but I don't think Fury's ever been physically as impressive as he was in the Klitschko fight. He was in better shape that night, had better legs, and quicker hands than I've ever seen him have before or since. Probably because he was on PEDs, but I don't know. Probably still on PEDs, who knows. White British fans who support a guy who said don't stop in their shops and it. But yeah, mate, that is embarrassing. Any white British man who supports AJ needs a wedgie, man. They really do. Do you think AJ is gay? I don't know, man. Only he knows. I haven't seen proof either way. I hope not. Sanders did better than Fury did versus a younger Klitschko. Yeah, again, that proves that Tyson Fury is a bum, right? Because Corey Sanders stopped Vladimir early, and Fury went the distance against him. So obviously, using super duper ultra mega boxing genius logic, Fury is a bum. Just like he's a bum for not stopping Wilder in the first round, because if you fight a chinny shithouse dosser bum who can't box and has no skills and no chin and is half your size, then you better stop them in the first round, okay? And Vitali beat him, so yeah, he did. That's true. A lot of female casuals seem to like AJ for some reason. I think we know why, man. I smiled at one while telling her I made 80 quid betting on Usyk beating him. Was begging Usyk not to stop him in the 12. Yeah, yeah, man. So a lot of the women like AJ. I guess he's a good-looking guy. I wouldn't know because I don't take it up the ass, but yeah, he's probably a good-looking guy, you know. Yes, AJ is gay. Him and AK Skins are lovers. Yeah, according to Base Boxing Basement, those guys are. It's the physique of Joshua that does it. Yeah, AJ's got that like Adonis physique, man. He looks like a prime Arnold. He really does, man. Not quite as big, but like very, very like bodybuilder-ish. You know, he looks like a bodybuilder to me, man. Fighters in the past deteriorated faster for a multitude of reasons. This guy's on a mission to prove that, like he's on a real mission to try and convince us that Vladimir was at his prime at 40 years old. You're gonna have to come better than this, man. But let's read on. Lewis was still excellent. I would say prime in his last fight, nearly 38. Heavyweight top 5 is oldest in the sport compared with lightweight. I've yet to hear a single heavyweight champion who was at their prime at 40. You're gonna have to give me some examples. And bringing up Bernard Hopkins, you know, as being the exception to the rule, that's not good enough, mate. You're gonna have to come better than that, seriously. Luis Ortiz is pretending to be only 43 years old. He bought a passport off Fat Tony from The Simpsons. same deal Apu got off him. Death certificate included. Going the distance isn't here we go. Like going the distance isn't inherently worse than KO. Yes, it is. Vlad's win over Bird is better than Ike's because he was more dominant and took less damage. Okay. Landing a few more slaps per round. But again, you couldn't see the satire in that last comment. Come on, man. Like, landing a few more slaps per round certainly isn't better than dominating a fighter by knocking them out. Yeah, of course. I mean, running away from a guy for 12 rounds, hitting him behind the head all night, and scoring a undeserved decision isn't as good as knocking a guy out in 2 rounds. Let's be honest, man. I remember all these Fury fangirls saying Vlad lost to Bryant going into Vlad Fury. I remember some people saying that. I mean, obviously they didn't believe it because he clearly won, but I do remember them criticizing him for his performance and calling him a robot with no chin, you know? I do remember that. Anyone at all who supports Gay J is an embarrassment, yeah. Anthony Joshua, he puts me off, man. I couldn't support the guy. There's nothing I like about him as a person, you know? He comes across as very, very, like... He comes across as very pretentious to me, very fake, like very manufactured, you know, the stay humble shit while the guy's a flipping thug. Like, he's never... You know, to me, he's always rubbed me up the wrong way. He's never really been a guy I could get behind. All fighters are on come on, man. Fury was in his athletic prime, but not absolute. Probably like Vlad was when he lost to Purity, or maybe Saunders, Brewster. But Vlad's absolute prime was much later. Like I said, I believe Vlad's prime was when he was like 31, 32. Like, because again, I've watched those fights, and to me, he looked so much quicker and so much more athletic back then than he did when he fought the likes of, say, Marius Wack and Pulev and guys like that. I think he was already on the decline then, personally. I really do. And he looked completely awful by the time he fought Brian Jennings. So Fury got him at the right time, and so did AJ. Larry Merchant. I'm a big fan, Larry Merchant. You're my favourite commentator. You're a European lover, typical English hating Scot. Man, I'm hurt by that. You know, they say you should never meet your heroes, and Larry Merchant coming onto my stream and saying that about me, that hurts, man. That really it disappoints me. Should never meet your heroes, man. I'm about to tear up, man. I'm about to tear up at that. All right, where was I? Dirty Fury, but Gobbler. Didn't AJ say something about the superior black race in a TV interview? All sounds a bit Malcolm X to me. Like most decent people, I find racism dumb and dangerous. Is AJ a racist? Well, I think where the superior black race thing came from, it was some message that he sent to Eddie Chambers, and Eddie Chambers outed him. Basically, he said, "You're a disgrace to the superior the superior black race." He was talking to Eddie Chambers, and Eddie Chambers decided to put it out there on the internet, and people saw it. I didn't really say much. I didn't really say much about it at the time, but it was something that rubbed a lot of people up the wrong way. But the media did everything they could to kind of hush it up, you know. So yeah, AJ definitely has an inferiority complex, or is it a superiority complex, whatever you call it. And he's definitely a complete scumbag. He's a thug, you know. He is what he is. Pac-Man and Marquez were both elite at 40, but I thought it was the heavyweights that aged more. You know, I thought they aged slower, you know, than the lighter weight guys. Vitali was still a top heavyweight at 40 and a half, and was far more injury prone than his bro. Plus, his style was more intensive. But let's be honest, Vitali looked very aged by that point, didn't he? I mean, you look at Vitali versus Adamek and Chisora and Manuel Char. That come on, like that Vitali was beatable. Let's be honest, it was only a matter of time. That was why he retired. He knew he was getting on, and if Tyson Fury or AJ at their prime had gotten in with that version of Vitali, I'm not saying he couldn't have beat them, but give it another year or so. He was on his way out. You know, he would have been beaten by one of these young contenders. You know. Probably, in my opinion, he would have, you know. Is what it is. Watch what you're saying. AJ will come around looking to smash your glass jaw, and yeah. Listen, if AJ comes around, I'll set Nick Campbell on him. You know, the greatest Scottish heavyweight of all time. He'll avenge Gary Cornish. You know? Every now and then, the real AJ slips out. It makes me smile when it happens. You can take the guy out of gangster, but you can't take the gangster out of the guy. Yeah, AJ's a gangster, man. He's hard. I wouldn't mess with him. He's from the mean streets of Watford. You don't want to mess with him, man. And he's the superior race, despite losing to a fat Mexican and a smaller white guy, you know. If Fury was in his prime when he fought Vlad, he was more athletic and better technically back then. Oh, I think Fury was in his prime. More athletic and technically better back then, harder to beat too. I don't know if he was technically better because he turns his punches over a bit better now, and you know his timing seems to have improved a bit, but his movement was a lot better back then. He was a lot faster. He had more stamina. I think he was definitely at his prime physically. I really do. I remember Smooth Critical saying Povetkin and all Russians should be banned. Now, all fighters on pay days. I don't know. Did he say that? I don't know, man. He might have. Smooth Critical. When AJ fought Vlad was not just 17 months older, but at 41, but 17 months active, dethroned in his last fight, winless in 2 years. In Britain, circumstances were not comparable. I think they're somewhat comparable. They're definitely AJ fought the older version, but I mean it's not as if he wasn't old when Fury fought him. He was old when Fury fought him. Don't talk about racism without definition. Whatever that means. No, I didn't, you liar. All right, that's in response to Precise. Precise. All right. My favourite AJ moment was when he told the BLM crowd it's time to stop buying from white businesses. It's funny that because his promoter's white, you know, that he was working with Sky Sports at the time. It's ran by white guys. Pretty much everybody was who he was associated with. His trainer was white, manager was white. I mean, it's a bit hypocritical, isn't it, man? And he fights in the UK because, Africans just won't support him. He needs that British pound. He needs the white British football fans who say, "Oh, Anthony Joshua," who don't know nothing about boxing and get pissed up and sing "God Save the Queen." Man, he needed those guys. They go there and boo the Ukrainian national anthem, and then later down the line, a few months later, have Ukraine emojis in their profile pictures and on their shop windows. He needs those people to support him. That's what it is. Vitali made hard work of Albert Sosnowski, who got his shot by wrecking an old Danny Williams and orderly Olympic victim Paldo Viedos. That Sosnowski Williams KO was hilarious though. Yeah, Sosnowski was all right. He was too small though. Way too small for the heavyweight division, man. But he was a good fighter. Technically, he was a good fighter. Beterbiev is representing Canada tonight because they were trying to cancel him. He is great friends with Kadyrov, by the way, the leader of Chechnya and friend of Putin. Yeah, that's true. Beterbiev, I think he is a Chechnyan, isn't he? But he's a Canadian citizen now, I think. He's lived there for many years now, That's what it is. Sure did. Smooth Critical one under your male feminist account. But does he have multiple accounts? It's funny, that actually reminds me, actually. I thought for a while that Smooth Critical was actually Irish NK. You remember him? they had, their comments, I swear down, I was so convinced they were the same person for a while. Their comments were, identical. And that guy's, disappeared off the face of the internet. I don't know where he is, man. Smooth Critical, that's fair enough, bro. 2015... Fury does better against AJ, and 2020 Fury does better against Usyk. I think the only thing Fury does better now is punching technique. Other than that, he's declined at everything. His career after Vlad has been a joke, to be honest. Yeah, it has been, to be fair. It's just been a shit show against Wilder, and he looked alright against Dillian White, but was it a real fight? I don't know, man. AJ is finished now. I don't know. We'll see how he looks against Usyk, man. They might have the zone and the boxing establishment might have a trick up their sleeve for that one. Maybe Hearn and maybe AJ have something planned, Exactly. Boo the Ukrainian anthem. Now Ukraine is holy. Yeah, exactly. The people who are Ukrainian, who were booing the Ukrainians and calling them vodka drinking Russians and all that, they now have the Ukrainian flag and they're flying that and saying, yeah, pray for Ukraine. We stand with Ukraine. These same people. Pretentious, man. It really is. Beterbiev has represented Canada on numerous occasions. Yeah, that's true. I hope Usyk will completely expose him to the point those dumb casuals shut up once and for all. Yeah, and yeah, AJ. Look, we'll see what happens. I'm not getting my hopes up. We'll see what happens. I'm rooting for Usyk. Don't get me wrong, man. But I am. We'll see what happens, though. Beterbiev has fought under the Russian flag, amateur and pro. He has, yeah, that's true. But he is, most of his fights have been in Canada. My brother met Sosnowski. Says he's a really nice guy. He also said that Vitali hits like a horse, and Vitali is a bit of an that was a shame, that fight though, because Vitali played with Sosnowski. He was sadistic that night, kind of like against Adamek and against Chisora too. He was punishing those guys, man, just beating their heads. Vitali was quite sick in the head, man. When he was fighting, he would punish his opponents. You look at what he did to Shannon Briggs and Samuel Peter too. He was carrying. I swear he was carrying these guys and just keeping them in there for the advertisements, man. Oh man, I've always thought booing and oppressing national anthem was xenophobic, disrespectful, and idiotic. Similarly, I don't have a Ukraine emoji or avatar. It's called logical consistency, kid. Yeah, absolutely. I've never booed a national anthem, and I've also never virtue signaled with a flag. I don't do either of those things. Stay consistent, man. Absolutely. God bless. I absolutely agree, man. God bless. White is Chisora level, but an inferior pressure fighter, less head movement, weaker chin, slower feet, powerful left hook, but he was never landing it. The fight went exactly as we knew it would. Yeah, that's right. It definitely did. I didn't give White a chance in that fight, and Fury dominated it, you know. Fantasy fight, Otke versus Froch, preloaded gloves. Otke unanimous decision in a one-sided fight. Probably wins 12 rounds to 0. I'm not even kidding. I think he wins 12 rounds to 0. And probably gives Froch a bit of a beating towards the end, you know. I think I've seen Irish NK, seen him in comment sections, big fan of Frampton. Yeah, he was Carl Frampton's biggest fanboy, and every time you would... He was one. The only reason I bring him up, like, I've not got a problem with the guy. The only reason I bring him up is because I thought him and Smooth Critical were the same person. And basically, when you would make a video about Carl Frampton, or even if it wasn't about Carl Frampton, he would come in the comments and he would say something about Carl Frampton, and he would write like a long comment, like he would write long comments trying to explain why Lomachenko should fight Carl Frampton if he wants to prove himself, and why Carl Frampton's the greatest fighter of all time, and he will knock out Scott Quigg in 3 rounds and stuff like that. You know, just and he was also the reason why I thought he was Smooth Critical is because his opponents were his comments were very, very similar, and he was a big fan of Fury too. Like every single time that you made a video about Fury, or every single time Fury was even mentioned, this guy would cite all the factoids about Fury's career. Fury did this, and the opponent was a 2 whatever favorite, and Fury did this, and he had a something or nothing reach advantage, and this guy was coming off a win against that guy, or like, and it would just be pages and pages of factoids, and it'll be all this stuff about why Fury's unbeatable and why he's the greatest of all time, and why everybody else is an absolute and utter bum except for Fury. And I started to notice the pattern. I was like, every comment is the same thing. Like, it's just all about how great Fury is and how nobody can touch him. And it's just, I was starting to notice when I was seeing the Smooth Critical comments, I was like, are they the same person? Because I'm pretty sure that guy started popping up in my comment section when he disappeared. If you know, it was weird, man. I put 2 and 2 together, and maybe I was wrong. I thought they were the same person. You know, it is what it is. But that guy was mad obsessed with Fury, and it got to the point I like told the guy, listen, if it's about Fury or it's about Carl Frampton, don't even comment. I'm not interested, because again, the guy was obviously like emotionally connected to both of them. You know, where I'm like, come on, man, just leave it out. You know, leave it out. If it's about them, I don't need to hear your comment, because I already know what you're gonna say. You know, it is what it is. Really looking forward to the fight tonight. Should be a good one. Yeah, man, it's going to be good. I'm really looking forward to it too. And it's how can it not be a war? How can it not be a good fight, man? I like both Ukrainians and Russians. Good people. Yeah, same. I've got no issue with anybody. There's good people everywhere, you know? It is what it is, man. I'm not surprised to hear that Sinovsky Sinovsky is a decent fella. That left hook he landed on Williams basically finished him, knocked him into La La Land for good. Was on ITV4 one weekend. Yeah. Sinovsky was. I think that got Sinovsky a lot of exposure in the UK, and yeah, he was quite well respected over here. You know, he was a good contender, good fighter. Just what wasn't big enough to compete with the top level heavyweights, but he was a good fighter, man. He really was. I'm just trolling. I do love how everyone now says they're all on PEDs when their boyfriend pops, while calling me a conspiracy theorist for stating the obvious 10 years ago. Yeah, exactly. But precise, you know, you're 10 years ahead of everybody, man. You know, nobody can keep up with you, man. In 10 years, everybody will say all fights are fixed. Yeah, of course they will. Of course they will. And you know, they'll act as if they know everything when obviously you'll have moved on to the next thing. You know, you'll be predicting the next thing for the next 10 years, you know. Frampton is a fighter that is hugely hyped by British fans, but I always thought Quigg and Warrington are better. I agree. I never really rated Frampton. I always thought that Quigg was the better fighter, and even when Quigg lost to Frampton, I still thought he was the better fighter. That was just one of them situations where he just didn't perform on the night. It was a terrible Joe Gallagher game plan, and he didn't put enough pressure on Frampton early, and he started too late. That was a shame. That I think he should have won that fight, man. Never a fan of Carl Frampton personally. Never liked him. Never even liked him as a fighter. I gotta be honest. Thought he was massively overrated. He surprised me a few times though. I wasn't expecting him to beat Quigg, and I wasn't expecting him to beat Santa Cruz. I know a lot of people, most people thought he lost that fight, but he got the win officially. I wasn't expecting it to even be competitive. I thought he was going to lose clearly. Is what it is, man. If all fights are fixed, then Vlad, Vitali, Triple G, and Loma never won a legit fight. Yeah, they probably didn't. They were all probably fixed. Who knows? It doesn't make a difference to me in my life, Good to see you back, Noted. Yeah, good to see you here, man. God bless. Thanks for showing up, man. God bless. I liked Frampton. Thought he was a cool guy, but Warrington, Quigg, and Selby were better fighters. Yeah, they were. It's interesting. I remember when Josh Warrington fought Frampton, and going into that fight, see, I always thought Warrington would beat Frampton. I picked him to win that fight, and going into that fight, a lot of people were saying that Warrington had no power, had no skill, he's got no chance, Frampton's going to knock him out, Frampton's the elite fighter of the two. And Warrington went in there and absolutely, utterly dominated and schooled Carl Frampton. The fight wasn't cold, it wasn't close, wasn't competitive, and I don't think I even gave Frampton a round. If I did, it was like one, maybe two at most. He got dominated in that fight. Josh Warrington got little to no credit for that victory, and people still to this day act as if Frampton was a better fighter than him. And I'm like, skill-wise, Warrington is underrated. It was the same against Selby. Going into that fight, a lot of people thought Selby's going to destroy him. He's too big, he's too skilled. And Warrington went in there and completely dominated him and schooled him. And I think Warrington technically is underrated. I really do. And he tends to go over people's heads, if you know what I mean. You're riveting take, Smooth Critical. You're a genius, truly. Yeah, Smooth Critical is a genius, man. Yeah. It's funny how upset people get if you don't believe the fairy tale that boxing knows no corruption and that every fight is totally legit. I mean, it is what it is. Like, it's a situation of where people are like that, but only when it suits, because if a fight happens, and Precise did make this point too, he pointed out that, like, back in the day when Pacquiao beat Joshua Clottey, you remember that fight? A lot of people were calling that a fix just because they didn't like Pacquiao. And a lot of the same people who call that one a fix, they don't hold other ones to that same standard, if you know what I mean. Like, they'll look at that fight and say, well, Clottey didn't throw many punches, right? And they'll say that means the fight was a setup, right? That means it was fixed. But these same people will look at, say, Deontay Wilder versus Malik Scott, when Wilder didn't even land a punch, and Malik Scott went down like a sack of spuds and was flopping around, like, pretending to try to get up. And they'll say that was totally legitimate and no fighter will ever take a dive, and you're just a conspiracy theorist, That's just one example of just, like, the inconsistency of boxing fans. To me, they don't really have a standard. They'll say that they don't believe in fixed fights, but when it suits them to believe in fixed fights, things will change, if you know what I mean. No criticism of Joe Gallagher, please. Tesco Joe is untouchable. Yeah. You hit that body as hard as you can. I recently watched Cotto against Mosley. I found it funny that Manny Stewart asked Max Kellerman if Floyd beat Hatton but avoided the winner, and he would be considered number one, and Max said yes. Yeah, Floyd at that point in time really didn't want to fight Cotto. That was I think in the post-fight interview for the Hatton fight, Larry Merchant asked him about Cotto, and Floyd said he's retired. Where have we heard that recently? 1 second. Where's my? Yeah, just getting my glass. 1 second. I need more sugar. What was it? Speaking of Danny Williams' opponents, whatever came of Carl the Fridge Baker, I was looking forward to the court case with Williams the Fridge Perry of NFL fame. Carl Baker, yeah, he was the guy who wasn't he the guy that Derek Chisora kissed at a weigh-in? I think he's that guy, Carl Baker. It was like a heavyweight journeyman. I think that's the guy that Chisora kissed. Santa Cruz beat Frampton 8-4 for me. Yeah, most people seem to think that. Like I've not watched the fight since it happened. I saw it when it happened, and I've not rewatched it. And I didn't really score it when I saw it live, but I'll rewatch it at some point. But I remember a lot of people thinking at the time that Santa Cruz should have won it, and then of course in the rematch, he completely schooled Frampton. Fight film demonstrates the fixes with evidence and facts. Yeah, he does. He does film studies, and he breaks the fights down. He asks all the right questions, but he's just a conspiracy theorist, isn't he? Second fight was exactly the same. Yeah, Frampton in the second fight got absolutely embarrassed. It wasn't even competitive. He got completely schooled that night. I remember that night really well. I think when I was watching that fight, it got cut off, and I missed most of it. I only ended up getting to see like most of the second half. I missed like the early part of the fight. But yeah, the second half, and then of course, Frampton just got completely schooled, man. He did. Think we've argued about Frampton and the McGuigans allegedly ripping him off. All seemed a bit weird, but we'd be interested in your take on it. Frampton's full of shit. The McGuigans never ripped him off. I'll tell you what happened there. He threw the McGuigans under the bus for that piece of shit, Daniel Kinahan. That's what happened there. Daniel Kinahan got into Carl Frampton's ear, convinced him, he can make more money, laundering money for MTK, and screw the McGuigans. Look, if it wasn't for the McGuigans, we would never have heard of Carl Frampton. We would never have heard of Josh Taylor. We would never have heard of Lee McGregor. We would never have heard of any of these guys if it wasn't for the McGuigans. They did a great job bringing these guys through. And MTK and that scumbag Daniel Kinahan basically poached them all and gave us a sob story about how, they were putting them up in hotels and they weren't paying them enough. Yeah, well, as a result of that, those guys were developing into good fighters. And look what happened to both of them under MTK. I mean, Carl Frampton didn't, after he left the McGuigans, he got embarrassed in nearly every fight he was in. Let's be honest, he didn't have the same stability, he didn't have the same motivation. He was getting paid crazy money to basically laundering money through his fights, and yeah, he just didn't develop, man. It is what it is. And I've made my feelings on that pretty clear, I think it was to do with Warrington going life and death with Kiko in the first fight. Yeah, that's true, but I mean, Kiko's a tough guy and a tough trial horse, and Warrington, stylistically, it was always going to be a problem because both of those guys are come forward, high volume pressure fighters. It's just that Kiko had legitimate knockout power and Warrington didn't, so that was always going to be a tough fight. But going in against Frampton, I never thought that it was going to be this domination from Frampton. I always thought Warrington was a better fighter after watching him. Warrington did everything better as far as I'm concerned. Wouldn't mind seeing Warrington versus Cordina for the two-way. Apart from the Lara saga, Warrington's career has been managed great. All the steps at the right time, not wasting time with Galahad. Yeah, exactly. The Galahad rematch. I said at the time, I was at that fight, and I said at the time, and I've stood by this from day one, that was not a robbery. The people that were calling that a robbery, I don't know what they were looking at. Look. Kid Galahad showed up to clinch and spoil and run and ruin the fight. He just stank the joint out and tried to nick the title and tried to just foul his way through it. And Josh Warrington actually came to fight. He outworked him. He outfought him. He backed him up the whole night. And he actually was the guy in there legitimately trying to win and trying to entertain the crowd and trying to fight. And he clearly won that fight. And I'm glad he didn't give him the rematch. There was absolutely no point of giving him the rematch. And we found out that Warrington was the better fighter anyway. So, yeah, I'm glad that rematch didn't happen, man. And I stood by Warrington not taking the rematch from day one, is what it is. Frampton always struck me as a fighter who peaked early and was arguably past his prime when bigger fights happened. When his bigger fights happened, a bit like Ricky Hatton, WBU, in that respect. Yeah, Ricky Hatton, obviously in his prime years, was defending the WBU belt, and by the time he got to like elite world level, he was definitely a bit shop worn. I definitely agree with that, and there's definitely an element of that with Frampton. Good fight, but I'd favour Warrington over Cordina. Yeah, I'd favour Warrington. He's way more proven at this point. He definitely is. Scott had no heart and was afraid of getting hurt. Also, Wilder's friend wanted to get another first round KO. Molina took so many dives, but journeymen commonly have that mentality. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. I don't know what was going on there. It's just maybe, I don't know. Did they pay him off or were they just friends? Like it was him being. I'm trying to think. Was it because he was his friend and because he actually wanted to build up Wilder's career, or was he literally just a complete pussy? Because I don't know. Like I've seen him in other fights where he actually took shots and showed a good chin. Like I don't know, man. It was a weird situation, but. Yeah, it was definitely a dive. There was no doubt about that. Nothing clean landed. It is what it is, man. Where was I? 1 second. I'd also favour him over. Really surprised Cordina landed that shot, especially after Ogawa's dominant first round. Yeah, that's one of them things. It's one punch can really turn a fight round. That is what it is, man. One of the biggest dives was when Crawford fought that African fighter. The bod bunch didn't even connect. Oh, what you're on about Indongo? Do you know, I thought that was a dive when I watched it. I've not watched it in a long time, but when I first watched it, I thought that was a dive, personally. That's how I saw it. The most obvious dive to me is Kovalev versus Canelo. That's my standard. If you can't admit that one, you're a fraud. Yeah, look, I've ranted about that one at length. That was clearly a fixed fight. I don't care what anybody says. Not interested. What's your thoughts on Fury being denied access to the UAE because of Kinahan? I don't know. I've not really looked into it. We know he's connected with Kinahan. There's no doubt about that, and we know he's under investigation. So I guess it's just a formality. We'll see what happens. All the guys who left the McGuigans for that bum Davison have regressed. Of course they have. Look at how Josh Taylor looked in his last fight. Look at how Lee McGregor looked in his last fight. Both of them looked like shit. And look at how Carl Frampton looked at the end of his career. Complete shit. All three of those guys, when they were with McGuigan, were winning fights. They were looking great. They left McGuigan and went with some bum like MTK trainer. And they all suck. They all regress. It is what it is, man. It's... People like to say that the McGuigans were treating them poorly, but let's be honest, they were managing them to perfection and they were helping them progress, getting them the right fights, the right training, and they were doing a great job and they had a great setup over there. And it's just a shame what happened. That people like Daniel Kinahan and offering these guys money up front to join his organization and screw over the people that they were with. It leaves a sour taste in my mouth. I've never liked it. Like when Frampton left the McGuigans and when Taylor and McGregor and that did the same thing, I never liked it. Said so at the time. I never liked it. Your thoughts on the Russian-Ukrainian fighters? Better than the British creme de la creme, but not pushed by the boxing industry because of politics. Yeah, I've said from time and time again, a lot of the Eastern European fighters, they have to do a lot more because they're held to a different standard to a lot of the Western fighters, like Lomachenko and Usyk and guys like that. They're never going to be as highly regarded as like a great world-class Western fighter who's popular and who brings in the money, How Ben Davison is training all these top fighters is beyond me. He's a pseudo-intellectual and talks a lot of nonsense. Yeah. One of the things that I've observed about Ben Davison, and I'm not saying the guy knows nothing about boxing. He's obviously a very passionate boxing fan like myself and like us guys. But what I've noticed about Ben Davison is he tends to overly analyse things. And he seems to kind of forget the rules of boxing and the basic fundamentals of boxing, telling these guys all this weird intellectual mumbo-jumbo in the corner. Just tell a guy to put his hands up or tell a guy to work his jab. Keep it simple. Stop overloading them with nonsense. If I was in the corner for a fighter and he's having a tough time, I just tell him, remember what you were taught in the gym. Keep your hands up, box, throw your punches straight, and set them up behind the jab. Just stick to the basics, man. Stop with all the mumbo jumbo, intellectually. I don't know, man. Just there's something about him that just doesn't strike me as a very knowledgeable or very professional trainer. Keegan Martinez is an underestimated fighter, and he won a world title in his mid-30s. Speaks for his quality and resilience, not to mention world-class fight power. He's always been a very good fighter, man. He's always been very tough and a very tough trial horse. And I would say that Carl Frampton probably looked at his prime when he fought Kiko Martinez, and he's never looked as good since. He's gone backwards after that fight, Papa Dom Chin, Kelly had. That's one of the funniest things Kell Brooks ever said, isn't it, man? Papa Dom Chin. Kiko's KO of Kid Galahad was great. Yeah, he was losing that fight too, and he scored a brutal knockout, man. I'm not saying Kiko is bad, just that before the Selby fight, that's basically all people had to reference as far as how good Warrington is. Well, Warrington actually, before that fight, he actually had a really good domestic level career. Like there were some quite good British level fighters he fought, fighting at area level and English level. And the thing about Josh Warrington is he travelled a bit around the country, and he wasn't always politically protected. He actually had to travel to other guys' hometowns for a bit, and he actually had to build his resume and build his fan base organically. And I think that was very good for Josh Warrington, because he really honed his skills and honed his craft outside of the limelight for a while. And he wasn't really pushed by the media. He wasn't given a huge platform to perform on. And by the time he became a big name, and by the time he had got himself a title shot, he was very, very experienced and had gone 12 rounds many times. And he was seasoned, and he was durable and had great stamina. And to me, Josh Warrington's one of the most improved and well-developed British fighters we've had in recent years. And I think he's really underrated, man. I really do. He really is very good. He really is. What's with some boxing gossip Brit channels making a big deal of AJ scolding some kids while never even mentioning Kinahan's name? Paige Shills. I noticed that too, Precise. And you know what? When it comes to the Kinahan situation, do you know the thing I've noticed about Kinahan is, see when people do talk about him, they're very, very complimentary. He's such a great guy, such a great man. I've got a lot of time for him. The people that know him, they talk about what a great man he is. But it almost seems as if they're a little bit too complimentary, if you know what I mean. It's as if they've got a gun pointed to their head. And when it comes to these channels you're referring to who don't want to talk about him, it seems to me like, these guys, I don't know if they're actually connected with Kinahan and maybe they just don't want to say anything that will get them in trouble. Or maybe it's that they know about Kinahan's reputation, and because they're British channels, they feel as if it's a little bit too close to home. Like I can imagine, for example, if you were living in Ireland, and where of course there's a lot of stuff going on over there involving the Kinahans, and I can imagine if you were, say, a journalist over there, or you were involved in boxing, I can imagine you not saying anything about Kinahan then because it's a little bit too close to home. But when it comes to the likes of Hatman and guys like that, it makes you wonder, doesn't it? It makes you wonder if maybe they've been told behind the scenes, keep your mouth shut. Same with people like Coogan and IFL. You don't hear them talking about the Kinahan situation, do you? And those are guys that are obviously connected to it closely. So it does make you wonder that these guys might have they might have gotten the memo, don't say anything because this is a legal situation, and the less you know, the better. Or we don't want you saying something that's going to incriminate us or something. I don't know, man. It could be that kind of situation. People are uncharacteristically quiet about it. Guys that are usually all about clickbait and all about gossip, and they're uncharacteristically quiet about this one, aren't they, man? I've certainly noticed it. But I'm not scared of Daniel Kinahan. Listen, I know some dangerous people myself, put it that way. I'm not scared of some punk-ass gangster from Ireland. What was I saying here? What time's the main fight start in Nordic? I don't know, but it's in America, so I'm assuming it's around about 4 a.m. UK time. I don't know, man. I don't know where you're from. It'll be depend on what part of the world you're from. Don't knock the WBU guys. That's a future trophy of TBE Huey. Yeah, of course, man. What do you think of Pulev versus Chisora 2? It makes no sense to me. You think Chisora's going to get battered? Well, the first fight really wasn't close at all. Pulev dominated that fight. He won it 10 rounds to 2. And, the fight being in Germany, one of the judges gave it to Chisora, weird enough. So, yeah, but the fight really wasn't competitive. It was a clear win for Pulev. So, as long as Pulev hasn't completely gotten old overnight, he should win the rematch. Probably a wide points decision. But Chisora, I guess Chisora, since he's fighting at home, you have to wonder maybe he'll get the nod if it's close. But I just think that the only real chance he has is if Pulev's completely shot, which I think Pulev's years past his prime. He's maybe a little bit shot, but I think Chisora's even more shot. So I think I favour Pulev at this point in time. But we'll see how I feel as the fight gets closer, But right now I favour Pulev on points. I think he wins it. I think the clearest dive was that Danny Green fight or Wilder Malik Scott. The Danny Green fight was an interesting one because there was an investigation into it. And the punch clearly didn't land. It just skimmed the top of his head. But I think that Paul Briggs, who was the guy who took the dive, he apparently had brain damage going into the fight, which I don't think had been disclosed. So maybe he had some sort of psychological, neurological problem or whatever. I don't know. But the Malik Scott one was a clear dive, as far as I'm concerned. It clearly was. Did you see Turchi's dive versus Riakpo? No, I didn't watch that. I might though. You're referring to Paul Briggs. That was a lethal brush on the top of the head. You don't get up from those, yeah. I think Paul Briggs, there was an investigation. Apparently some gang bet on him to win or him to lose in the first round and Danny Green to win. And I think that Paul Briggs also, though, he had brain damage going into it. Lee Wood did great with Ben Davison. That's about it, yeah. We'll see how he does when he increases his competition, though. He's looking good so far. Hit him in the dick is great advice when all else fails. Yeah, of course it is. Look at Ward. I mean, he took that advice and managed to get the biggest win of his career, Shout out to Hawker Mustang. Good to see you here, man. It's been a while. God bless you. The psychology stuff is for between fights and not for the corner. You have 1 minute to deliver clear and concise instructions to the fighter. Yeah, exactly. You have to keep your fighter calm and you have to tell them what they need to hear. You don't want to be telling them all this mumbo jumbo. That's fine when you see these YouTube fluff pieces about how Sugar Ray Robinson and Jack Johnson were the greatest fighters ever, and you talk about all the psychology of the stuff they did and how they set up their punches and all that beautiful, fantastical stuff. But when you're actually in there and you're actually training a fighter, you got to be a little bit more to the point. You got to tell them, look, keep your hands up, throw your punches straight, and work everything off the jab, and don't overcommit and stuff. You got to give them sound, simple, basic advice. And I don't think Ben Davison knows how to do it. To be honest, I really don't, or at least I haven't seen him do it. In the Conlon fight, he didn't have a clue about the in-depth shite that was going on. Was panicking, told Wood the basic stuff he was doing, and it worked. Yeah, he just kept edging forward, working the body, and eventually he paid off. He got the knockout, Beterbiev by stoppage. I agree. I'm going with Beterbiev by stoppage. I don't think it's going the distance. Yeah, I agree. Shout out to the Fox Strikes, by the way. Good to see you here, man. I think that most people would agree that it's probably not going the distance because you've got two punchers, two guys that have been hurt before. It's going to be probably most likely a stoppage, and I'm going with Beterbiev. The Teamsters Union said nice things about Jimmy Hoffa and his mafia chums. They did great things for pensions. Just saying, yeah. I mean, if I knew Don Corleone. I would probably say nice things about him, put it that way. Roy Jones being robbed of the gold medal in Korea was a blatant fix. Yeah, that was a blatant robbery. He dominated that fight. Been a lot of robberies like that in the amateurs, to be fair. Hatman, that guy has about as much credibility as John boxing. Yeah, I'm not a fan of either of those guys. Hatman's just a clickbait gossip channel. The guy doesn't know shit about boxing. He's a clown. And John boxing is a complete tard. You know, here's what it is. Roy Jones learned from it and fixed his whole career with no drug testing, weight-drained opponents, fake belts, and opponents taking dives. Yeah, Roy definitely had a lot of shady shit in his career. I mean, he was a good fighter, don't get me wrong, but he definitely, he definitely avoided a lot of the toughest threats during his prime, and he didn't want to fight the lineal champion, and there was a lot of guys he didn't want to fight. 1 second, guys. Just going into the other room. Where was I? I'm just putting the kettle on. 1 second. Pulev looked better in his last fight, Nordic. Battered the guy that whooped Michael Hunter. Oh, you're on about Jerry Forrest? Yeah, he did. I hear he looked good against Jerry Forrest. I haven't watched the fight, but I've heard he actually looked better than expected. I used to get on with Hatman. Not sure what happened. One night he was reading everyone's observations except mine. Must have said something off message or whatever. I've never been a fan of Hatman. I used to watch his channel back in the day, but he's a guy who I think's agenda driven. I think he doesn't really know anywhere near as much about the sport as he claims to. And yeah, I'm not a fan personally of the way he does things. It is what it is. I think he's a clickbait grifter. Haven't seen the fight in ages, but Chisora got robbed the first time. Are you on about the Pulev fight? Nah, Chisora got dominated in that fight. He lost like 10 rounds. Chisora is 1 to 100 to be a cabbage. Pulev domination. Pulev should win it. He should win it, but we'll see. We'll see if he gets old overnight. Watch what you're saying about Kinahan, Nordic. He'll send his goons knocking at your door, mate. Yeah. Yeah, I'll have Kinahan goons and some of the TV license dudes at my door. We'll see. Maybe this Kinahan was behind the heaviness of Wilder's suit in the first fight. Yeah, or maybe it was Kinahan that put the egg weights in Fury's glove. Yeah, second fight. Beterbiev, Ben Davidson reminds me of modern day Billy Blanks Jr. Remember Tabo? Nah, I don't remember. The Korean guy beat in the quarters on a hotly contested decision, none other than Vincenzo Nardiello. He screamed and left the ring bawling his eyes out. Yeah, he had a flair for the dramatic, didn't he? That classic Italian drama. Anyway, I'm gonna wrap this one up because there's some things I need to do, and it's been like 3.5 hours or so. So yeah, let me know what you guys think. Anyway, thanks for joining. It's been fun. I've enjoyed it, and I'll try and get some videos out in the next week coming. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Peace. God bless. Have a good one.